the Nesta Rhysand relationship is dear to me. It is dear to me. They hate each other's guts, and I hope they do forever. I know I talk a lot about how I hate Nesta haters, and Rhysand, I would say, is a Nesta hater. How do I reconcile those things? Honestly, quite easily. Hi, my name is Michelle. Today we're going to be talking about A Court of Wings and Ruins, and we are going to be in the second part, the first half of the second part, because the second part is quite long. It's called Cursebreaker, and I just, had such a delightful time getting ready for this video, prepping my notes, because not that much exciting happened. I mean, there's some stuff. We actually start with the excitement in this section, and then it's just kind of I don't know. I think it's because there's a lot of Nesta in this section, if we're gonna be honest. I love Nesta. I love ACOWAR. Throne of Glass will always be my girl. Throne of Glass is that girl. You know, she's the queen of the castle. But there is something about ACOTAR that is just such a giggly fun little time. I was just cheesing and having such a delightful time. Let's get started. Should we let you know what happened in the first section? I guess so. We'll give you the tiniest recap. Feyre was in the spring court. She was being a sneaky lady, and she was acting kind of as a spy for the night court. She is the high lady of the night court. She did indeed marry Rhys and become high lady of the night court before they went on this mission to Hybern, and then when it turned out that spring court had allied with Hybern, Feyre took it upon herself to go kind of infiltrate their court and learn what she could while she was there, pretending that she had been brainwashed by Rhysand before she is going to return back to Rhysand. At the end of the last part, though, that had all kind of finished. She was getting ready to go home when we found out the twins from Hybern, the prince and princess, the niece and nephew of the king of Hybern, had been essentially poisoning her. They'd been giving her this famine, which is this compound that gets rid of her magic. She was going to winnow out of there. And then she realized that she did not have enough magic to do so. She found this out because she stopped to help Lucien, because Lucien was in a pickle with Ianthe, where Ianthe was trying to force herself upon Lucien. It was really not nice. And so Feyre saved Lucien from Ianthe. It made Ianthe mangle her own hand using some compulsion, essentially. And then her and Lucien got out of there. But unfortunately, they don't have any magic. So last we saw them, they were stepping through a door to the Autumn Court. If you recall, Lucien is actually the son of the High Lord of Autumn. He's the youngest son of all of the brothers at Autumn Court. And he does not get along great with Autumn Court, which is why he was in Spring Court. He had fled Autumn Court because everyone there was mean to him. And so they have to stay hidden from the High Lord. No one can really know they're there because Feyre is just a hot commodity and would kind of be nice to use the bargaining chip with Tamlin, and Lucien is public enemy number one in Autumn Court. So great. That's where we're at. It is chilly in Autumn Court. As you might imagine, it is autumn in Autumn Court, and so the weather gets kind of cold, especially at night. There are no guards at the door. They walk through this doorway. There are no guards at the door, at least none that Feyre can see. But again, she doesn't have any magic, so she wouldn't be able to sense if there were guards a little distance off, or cloaking themselves with some sort of magic. And she's very kind of nervous about it. She feels super nervous, almost naked to be wandering around without her magic. This is not something she's experienced in years since she's become Fae, and it makes her feel quite vulnerable. The plan is just to keep moving north until someone rescues them, essentially, or to go to the Winter Court. The Winter Court doesn't like them very much, but the Winter Court is reluctant allies with Night Court, so if they get to Winter Court, hopefully someone would be able to help them get back to Night Court, I think is the plan. But ideally they would like to get rescued before then. Feyre knows that Rhysand would have felt it the moment the bond between the two of them went dark, especially since she was hey, I'm headed home, and then nothing. And so she's hoping Rhys is going to be able to find her, and as soon as her magic kind of flicks back on, she knows she's going to be able to call him up, and either he can come pick her up or she can winnow them out of there. She's not sure what Rhysand is going to do with the fact that the bond is dark. Is he going to start looking for her? Will he know where to look? Is he going to go to Spring Court? That is very dangerous for him, obviously, because Tamlin wouldn't really appreciate that. So it's a little unclear to Feyre exactly what Rhys is going to do. So for now, they're just hiking north. They hike for a little bit until nightfall, and then Lucien finds them a cave to sleep in. It's this little spot that he used to use as a hideout when he was hunting. They have food packed with them. Feyre packed a bag. She was planning to leave, and so she had packed camping supplies to get out of there, but unfortunately they can't risk eating any of it because they're not sure what has been laced with that Faebane, and they don't want to continue to poison themselves with Faebane because they really do need to get their magic back. So they kind of just throw out all of that food. And then Lucien and Feyre kind of are now able to have a chat. It's just the two of them there. And Lucian explains that he has been on to Feyre since Feyre did the thing with like the glowing orb of light in Hybern, because he knows that's a gift from the Dawn Court and not like what she proposed it was. I can't remember exactly what she said it was, but like he's like, no, you've been like tricking and tracking all of us with your tricky tracky tricks since Hybern. And Feyre says to Lucian, why not tell him being Tamlin, you were his faithful dog in every other sense. And Lucian's like, okay, glad to see the mask is off. Like, okay, girl, I guess it's a no holds barred, and now you're calling me his dog. He explains that he, like, didn't want to say anything. He's like, well, kind of twofold. He, like, didn't want to take hope away from Tamlin. Lucian very much is permissive parenting Tamlin, which is, like, not a great style of parenting. It's kind of where you just, like, let them do whatever they want because you're scared of them a little bit. And he didn't want to take hope away from Tamlin. He's like, Tamlin was having, like, such a hard time, and I wanted him to believe that you were there for the right reasons. Okay, why? You knew she wasn't, so, like, that seems kind of mean, actually. Whatever. And then he's like, also, I didn't want to make you get mad at me and blow my chances with Elaine. Because, if we recall, Lucian, when Elaine went into the cauldron, and, well, I guess when Elaine came out of the cauldron and came out as Fae, Lucian was like, that's my mate, actually. And so he is, like, really wants to get to his mate, Elaine. Feyre doesn't love that Lucian's main motivator seems to be this entitlement over her sister. Like, I don't love that you think that you're entitled to my sister and that the reason you're helping me is because you want to get close to her. Don't love that. I don't think that's great. Also, like, she's safe and sound right now. You don't own her. Like, so you need to, like, stop worrying about her. And Lucian kind of, like, doesn't believe her. Lucian's like, I don't know what's happening in Night Court. Why should I believe that she's fine? And Feyre says to her, like, offended, like, how dare you? If I believed for one moment that my sisters were in danger, no high lord or king could have kept me from going to save them. She's like, all of this has been for my sisters from the beginning. So the reason we ended up in this whole situation, the reason I went with Tim Tam to begin with, was for my sisters. So if my sisters were in any danger, I wouldn't be just, like, wearing a pretty dress in Spring Court, being like, Tamlin, I cannot kiss you because of trauma. I'm gonna go paint again. Like, she's like, I would be looking for my sisters. And I want to be like, Lucian, sit your booty down. You think you care more about Feyre's sisters than her? No. You might have this mating bond with Elaine, but, like, no, you don't even know Elaine. You don't even know her. And Lucian's like, well, what about me? Were you going to save me in your path of destruction through the Spring Court? Lucian, she did just save you. What are you talking about? Bestie love. She did just save you. Do you remember the last video when she did save your butt from Ianthe? What do you mean, were you going to save me? These people are so mean to Feyre. Feyre just, like, keeps saving them, and then they're like, well, were you going to save me? Okay, sorry, I've saved you multiple times in the past. So I'm not going to, like, chuck you in a river for fun now. Like, you're being rude. Lucian and Alice can be in the same boat. Bad friends. The bad friends boat. And Feyre is like, all I wanted to do was to collapse Tamlin's court from the inside in order to set things up for the war. Like, honestly, you would have been fine, Lucian. You would have been fine. We were collapsing his court so Tamlin didn't have access to his armies to help support Hybern, because Hybern is the bad guys. And so we need to make sure they don't have access to forces since you guys already let them into your house. Do you understand? That night, Feyre, like, decides not to sleep because she does not trust Lucian not to just, like, kill her. Lucian is, like, really mad about everything. And so she's a little worried Lucian's gonna just murder her, which, like, he wouldn't, because he, again, wants to get to Elaine. If he murders Feyre, that really lowers his chances. Although, I don't know, Rhys might let him through. We'll come to find that Rhys is, like, really sympathetic to the story of, like, a mate that does not love you back. Anyway, the morning comes. Feyre hasn't slept because she was, like, partially worried about Lucian, but also, like, partially just, like, worried about getting murdered. They are in, like, a hostile court. And then they wake up, they keep hiking. Lucian is like, I don't know if we should just keep hiking straight north. We're gonna go right through, like, the High Lord's territory, like, his house, his property, if we keep going straight north. And Feyre's like, too bad. East, if we go east, it'll take us too close to Summer Court, and I won't waste my time going west. I don't know why. I, to be honest, don't totally get the logic here, because the plan seems to be just to, like, chill until their magic is back. So, like, why are we rushing? Like, your magic's not gonna be back tomorrow. Also, like, you don't need, like, once your magic's back, you can just winnow yourself out of there. Like, you can winnow yourself from anywhere. Maybe they need to get to Winter Court so she can winnow because they're, like, allies. I don't know if that's true, though. I feel like it's not. I don't know why why Feyre's insistent that they go, like, north through the High Lord's territory. It, like, seems to make sense to go either direction. But Feyre says no. Okay. The court is like gorgeous. Autumn Court is gorgeous. I would love to live in Autumn Court. I understand that people here are evil, and I think that's only to like counterbalance the fact that it's the gorgeous, porgiest court. Oh my gosh, can you imagine autumn weather every day? Like every day it's a crisp 50 degrees, chilly. You got your sweaters on. You've got a pumpkin spice latte in hand, a chai tea. You're watching a Halloween movie. You're carving a pumpkin. You're looking out at the beautiful fall leaves. You would never get me to leave. I love Autumn Court. Again, they are evil, and I understand that. Like, maybe the politics wouldn't be the greatest. Maybe there'd be, like, you know, not great. It doesn't seem like they have great policies around women, but, like, it does seem like a fun time. It seems nice. They go fishing together and catch some fish, because remember, they can't eat Feyre's food from her backpack. They've been hiking for 5 days by the time we catch back up with them. It takes 3 days alone to hike through the High Lord's territory. Like, Baron's territory in the Autumn Court is massive, and it takes them 3 days to hike through that alone. Feyre is not sleeping really at night, not sleeping soundly, because she is very worried that Lucien might kill her. Finally, they like are getting to the very like north parts of the Autumn Court, and they reach some farmlands, which it seems like the farmlands should be in the farther south because that's closer to spring, but whatever, I'm not the boss here. And Lucien warns that they need to stay out of sight because the farmers will sell them out for extra cash if they see them, because again, Lucien and Feyre are both like hot commodities. Feyre is like chatting with Lucien as they walk, and she's asking him if he ever wanted to be High Lord of the Autumn Court, and he's like, probably not. It wouldn't be worth like the bloodshed it would take to get me to be High Lord. He would have to murder, I think he has 7 brothers, and I think you'd have to murder all of them in order to become the High Lord, which wouldn't be great. But he says, I wouldn't like to rule over a two-faced people. Not with that attitude. Like, maybe they're two-faced because of the situation they've been put in, and maybe if we gave them the opportunity to be nice citizens of a nice little court, maybe they would also be nice little people. They do live in the prettiest court in the land. It like smells like crisp apples, and you guys have pumpkin patches everywhere. I don't know if they do, but in my heart they do. Perhaps everyone would have a great time, actually, if you had like good leadership. A two-faced people, that's not very kind, Lucien. And then he talks about Jasminda, his like first love. We've been told the story of like Lucien a few times, that he had this like great love named Jasminda that his brothers killed in front of him, I believe. And I mean, that's a bummer. That's like not nice at all. And he's just like talking about this and how he was unable to protect her, and kind of how that like weighs on him, and how he kind of can never go back to Autumn Court and like look at this place again because of how much like trauma he experienced in it. Fair enough. They make it through the farmlands. They keep on hiking. That night, they're going to have to make a fire. It is just like too cold for them to survive, but they like are going to make a fire. That's pretty risky. As you might know, if you're hiding, having a fire is like telling everyone that you are there. Feyre is like exhausted at this point. She's like been hiking all day and barely sleeping at night, and she like has to sleep at that point. And she falls asleep. When she wakes up, Lucien has like put his cloak, or I guess as she's falling asleep, she realizes Lucien has like laid his cloak over her. Unfortunately, they do get found because they did have a fire. Like, maybe we should have resorted to snuggling first. I know it's a little awkward for you to snuggle, but like maybe we really should have tried that before we were like, let's light a fire, because they get found that night from their fire. It's Lucien's brothers. There are 3 of his brothers. Feyre wakes up with one of Lucien's brothers standing over her, a knife to her throat. And this brother says to her, father is rather put out that you didn't stop by to say hello. Lucien's father, not Feyre's father. Feyre's father is sailing around on the ocean, has no clue what's happening. And Lucien says, we're on an errand that can't be delayed. And Eris is the brother, says, rumor has it you two have run off together, cuckolding Tamlin. Wouldn't that be a funny turn of events? I thought it would have been a fun book. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. And it's Eris. And Eris was formerly betrothed to Mor. She didn't want to get married off to Autumn Court. Her family like married her off, because she was like quite a powerful young woman, and that's like what was done. And so she decided to make herself a less valuable commodity in the eyes of both Autumn Court and Night Court, and she slept with Cassian. And then her family like brutally beat her, nailed a sign to her, and left her on the border of Autumn Court for Eris to pick up. And they just like left her there. So not nice. Mor doesn't have a great relationship with Autumn Court in general. Feyre is like ready to kill Eris because like that she's besties with Mor, and so like that's not really cool behavior to her. But unfortunately, she still doesn't have her magic back. She knows that they can't go back. They can't like allow themselves to be taken back to Baron's house, because that won't end well with at all. Luckily, she's been training with Cassian, and she has like enough fighting skills to be able to fight off the men at a little bit. She's able to get airway from Eris, and her and Lucian are able to run. And then she's also able to get like a little bit of her magic back, just like a little kernel. What a convenient little bit of timing. She's able to tap into her Autumn Court magic because she is in Autumn Court, and she's able to like put up a wall of flame around the brothers to give them a little bit of a head start. They're running, but all of their stuff is back in the caves, and it is very cold. They're like at the border of Winter Court now, and it is freezing. And even Lucian's cloak, which he had laid over Feyre, is gone. Oh, that's what Lucian gets for doing one nice thing. This is such a bummer for our beloved Lush. Beloved to someone, not to me. They're moving, but like it is just like so cold. And Feyre knows that like if she was human, she would be dead. There's just like no way she would survive the night out here. She does not have enough magic to winnow or to call out Rhys or to grow wings, but she like keeps trying. She keeps checking in. She knows like they're gonna have to, because either they're gonna freeze to death out here or the boys are gonna find them. And like both are imminent threats. And Feyre is like, we need to rest. They're getting like quite close to the Winter Court borders. She knows that like the two of them are not going to make it much further, and she's like, we need to rest and we need to make a fire. And Lucian's like, we can't make a fire, you freaking idiot. We just got caught last time we made a fire. Like, we're just gonna have to snuggle for body heat, which is what we should have done before. That is truly what they should have done before. They find a spot to like hide from like the worst of the wind and snuggle up together. Feyre is like trying to shout down the bond to Rhys. Nothing. It's still closed. And then Lucian, as he's like laying with her, says, tell me about Elaine. And Feyre says, she loves her garden, always loved growing things. Even when we were destitute, she managed to tend a little garden in the warmer months. And when our fortune returned, she took to tending and planting the most beautiful gardens you've ever seen. Even in Prythian. It drove the servants mad because they were supposed to do the work, and ladies were only meant to clip a rose here or there, but Elaine would put on hats and gloves and kneel down on the dirt, weeding. She acted like a purebred lady in every regard but that. And she is like, I really don't know what Elaine is going to do now that she's Fae. And she like can't go home. Like Feyre hasn't really got to spend any time with her sister since they were put in the cauldron, and she's like, I really don't know how that's going to affect her. We were reminded of the fact that Elaine is engaged to a human man whose family like notoriously hates fairies, like a fairly well-off family, and they use a lot of their wealth to protect their community against the fairies. It was supposedly a love match, and Nesta wasn't a huge fan of him, but even she thought that they cared for each other. Recounting the story, I'm like thinking about Elaine in this book a lot more, period. But like a lot more in the context of the fact that the next book we're getting is supposed to be Elaine's book, and so I'm spending a lot of time kind of like thinking about her in a way that I really hadn't before. She's just like not a character that has really stood out to me, but I'm really curious to see kind of what her book will illuminate about Elaine. And I do think her book is going to be heartbreaking. I think the fact that she was engaged to this man that she loved in some capacity, and then had that snatched away from her is gonna hurt my feelings. I think Elaine's story is gonna hurt my feelings. I have heard some Elaine theories, and we'll kind of chat as we like go through Elaine's little bits in this book, kind of about where I think Elaine might end up in her book. Do you think we will have to unpack this situation in which she was engaged to a man, and that engagement was ended because she was like shoved in a cauldron against her will? I do think we're gonna have to reckon with that, because I think that is like obviously like a fairly big life event for her. And Lucian, like as she's talking about Elaine being engaged, Lucian's like kind of mad about it. And he's like, I just like kind of want to meet Elaine and see if she's worth fighting for. I'm sorry, that's a rude thing to say. I want to see if she's worth fighting for. Okay? I don't think you're worth fighting for, Lucian says to Feyre. And then I'll ask your mate how he survived it, knowing you were engaged to someone else, sharing another male's bed. And then he's like, actually, by the way, like, how did your relationship with Rhys start? She's like, were you sleeping with him while you were still engaged to Tamlin? Or like, what was the deal there? He's like, gets really like sassy about the timeline, which like does make sense. Okay. Like, I have to respect a friendship. I think sometimes people in books like don't want to respect the friendships of the characters and like want the main character to be everyone's top priority. No. Like, it would be weird if Feyre was Lucian's top priority. Like, his best friend is Tamlin. Do they have a weird relationship? Yeah. Tamlin wouldn't be my best friend, but like Lucian and Tamlin are best friends. And so like I value his loyalty to Tamlin. I think that's nice. And so he should be Team Tamlin in this situation. Even if Tamlin is a little bit in the wrong. A lot bit in the wrong. I do think there is something to be said about like Lucian still like defending his bro. Was his bro a little abusive? Yeah, maybe we shouldn't have defended abuse, but he was like really trying to do better this time around. I don't know, guys. I don't know how I feel, but I want to give Lucian the benefit of the doubt. Anyway, Feyre says, one would think, Lucian, that you'd be glad I fell in love with my mate, given that you're in the same situation Rhys was 6 months ago. That's right, 6 months ago, Feyre was engaged to another man, and now she is married to a totally different man. A lot can happen in 6 months. She's been a busy lady. And Lucian's like, you left us at the spring court. Do you know how devastated we were? And Feyre's like, no. That's not what happened. You abandoned me long before I physically left that place. Like, you just left me there to wither away and die. You abandoned me, not the other way around. Morning comes. They didn't die overnight. Yay, great news. She has enough power to make them a little fire, just like a tiny, tiny fire. Again, dangerous, smoke. A little signal to the world that you're there, but whatever. Then they head into Winter Court, where relationships with the Night Court are like quite tenuous since Under the Mountain, but better than with Autumn Court. It's another day before they reach the frozen lake. Polar bears are a real threat. I don't remember writing this or reading this, but apparently they're polar bears, and that's a real issue that they could come across. They don't encounter any, thank goodness. The real danger, it turns out, is exposure to the elements as they cross this like big expanse of ice where there's like no shelter from the wind. They're thinking about taking like another route, like going into the trees and like trying to get around the lake, but when they look back to the camp, the place that they left, like, I don't know, not that long ago, they see 3 of Lucian's brothers on the shore, the 3 brothers that had seen them before. They had tracked them, and they have flames in their hands. They have their magic, and they're going to use the flames to melt the lake, which is, not ideal. Feyre and Lucian are sprinting across the ice as the Autumn Bros chase them down, melting the ice behind them. They're also shooting things at them, and so Feyre and Lucian are running on ice in zigzags. And I bet it's silly looking. I bet the polar bears are watching from the side and laughing and giggling at this little event. They get through the Winter Court. Feyre can feel the changes they cross from Autumn Court into Winter Court, and she's also, and because she's in a new court now, she has Elsa ice magic, so she can refreeze things, which is great news. The brothers are still shooting at them, and they actually nick Feyre's ear with one of the arrows, and then she also gets shot in the forearm. So she has an arrow through her arm, and also her ear is bleeding. Bad time all around. Eris is almost to them, and he's melting ice around them as Feyre stops to rip the arrow out of her arm, and Eris says to her, either this ends with you under the ice or you come with me. But Feyre knows that her magic is coming back because her injury where the arrow stopped her is starting to heal, so she must be getting her magic back if she has her healing magic back. So Feyre does a bright light little explosion, kind of one of those they're supposed to confuse you, a non-violent de-escalation attempt, a non-violent diversion, and she sprints away, but Eris immediately winnows to where she sprinted to and just clocks her in the face. He just winnows in front of her and in the face. Okay. Lucian is fighting off the other 2 brothers in the back, and then Eris grabs her by the hair and is shoving a gag in her mouth, and things are looking real bad. Feyre's uh-oh, this is not good. Until, are you excited? A shadow slammed into the earth before us, cracking the ice towards every horizon. Not a shadow, an Illyrian warrior. Cassian's here. He's all healed up from the last time we saw him at the cauldron, and he's in a bad mood. And then Asriel arrives as well, and Asriel says to them, I suggest you drop my lady. I love this book. Feyre knows she just needs to get some space between her and Eris, and then Cassian will take care of the rest, but she needs to make sure she's away from Eris so Cassian can deal with it. So Feyre knees him right in the balls. Feyre, she had been tied up with these ropes of fire, and she's able to use her ice magic to get rid of those. The boys are ready, the Illyrian boys. Cass and Asriel are ready to kill the Autumn Court boys, but Feyre knows that would be a diplomatic nightmare to deal with. So she tells them to stop because they are going to need the alliance of as many courts as possible to face off against Hybern. So we can't be alienating them by murdering their princes. Both boys, without question, stop what they're doing, and they come and they walk and stand right next to her. We love this. Just not a question. She says stop. They say, okay, girl. They come stand right next to her. Good men. They're good men. And then Feyre says to them, you all deserve to die for this, but I am going to spare your miserable lives. And then Feyre, her magic is back. She takes off her glamour off of her arm to reveal her tattoos that paint her as the High Lady of the Night Court. And she says, I don't think she says this. In my notes, I say, she says, I'm the mother effing High Lady of the Night Court. I don't think she adds the mother effing part, but I think it's implied. And then Lucian says... Lucian, now's not the time, but Lucian says, there's no such thing as a High Lady, and Feyre says, there is now. It's almost as if she set Lucian up for that one. She was like, okay, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to reveal my tattoo, Lush. And then I'm going to need you to say there's no such thing as a High Lady. And then it'll be good, okay? Because, like, why, Lucian? Like, Lucian, we're literally about to get murdered. And you're like, girls are not allowed to be in charge right now. Okay. Kind of, like, you're missing the point, I think, of the tale. And then Feyre turns to Cassian and tells them to take them home and to bring Lucian. Lucian gets to come with them. Cassian's carrying Feyre, and Cassian says to Feyre as he's, like, carrying and flying. They're flying them home. I don't know who looks more uncomfortable, Az or Lucian Vincera. And Feyre's laughing because she didn't know his last name. And Vincera apparently is a giggly, funny name to her. And then Cassian just says to her, hello, Feyre. And Feyre gives him a big hug. She hasn't seen her boys in so long. She missed them. And then Cassian says, I missed you too. Ugh, that's really sweet. It did make me, like, get a little teary. Because of the reunion. It's sweet. They fly over through Wintercourt, I guess. Do they fly totally through Wintercourt? I don't know. They meet Mor somewhere. She's met at the border. Rhys isn't there. And Feyre's, like, kind of a little surprised that Rhys isn't there. And Mor explains that he's, like, racing home. He's coming home as soon as possible, but he was pretty far away. As soon as he heard it on the bond, he sent Mor, Cassian, and Azriel because they were the closest ones to her. Mor didn't come into Autumn Court or into Wintercourt because of the tensions with Wintercourt. And so I think she met them at the border of Night Court. I think the boys flew them all the way to Night Court. Mor and Feyre are hugging, and then Azriel and Lucian lands, and Mor is immediately, like, mean-mugging Lucian. And Cassian explains that, like, Lucian did fight with Feyre against his brother, so, like, he's cool, I guess. And then Az explains that they didn't even murder anyone, so that's, like, so sweet of them. They did not even kill any of the Autumn Court brothers. And then Mor says, let's go home. And Feyre's like, which one? Because they have Lucian with them. So, like, this seems risky. And Mor uses her truth magic to, like, assess Lucian. She's like that guy that does the, like, lie detector tests for, I think it's a lady now. I think we've switched to a lady who does them all for Vanity Fair. But that's her power, essentially. She's actually just that lady.
She's being truthful.
We should call that lady the Mor again. On the Vanity Fair test. We call this lady the Morgan. We actually call her that already. And she says, she checks Lucian. His intentions seem cool. And so she says to Feyre, the townhouse, you have someone waiting there for you. She's back in the townhouse. They're in, like, the front entryway. Lucian's assessing their surroundings. And Feyre knows that his first words will determine his fate. Like, he's seen Valaris now. So either he can be on Team Night Court or he can be dead. Like, there's not really an option in which he goes back to Springcourt now. Which, like, should they have given him that option? I really don't understand why they didn't winnow him to that palace above the Hewn City. Like, that seems like the better move. I understand that, like, Rhys and Feyre want to be together again, but, like, could we have just left him with the boys for a second? Had Mor winnow Feyre home and then had, like, him get winnowed to the Hewn City? It seems insane to me that they were just like, come to our house. Like, do we trust him that much? I don't trust him that much. Anyway, Lucian says his first words in this new house there are children laughing in the streets. I guess, okay, hold on, rewind. Valaris is less of a secret now. I will say that. We know that Valaris is less of a secret because Hybern has already attacked Valaris. So Valaris will become, like, known. It is not as, like, top secret as it was before. But still, it seems, like, risky to me to bring Lucian here. But Lucian says his first words in this house are, there are children laughing in the streets. And Amren says, that they do so at all after Hybern's attack is a testament to how hard the people of Valaris have worked to rebuild. Amren is also not obsessed with Lucian being here. She says, I see you brought home a new pet. And Lucian bows to Amren. And Amren says to him, already trained, I see. And then Feyre introduces the two of them to each other. And Amren says, looks like someone clawed you up, girl. Like, you are looking a mess. And then Lucian is kind of asking about where they are. And Feyre explains that they are in her home. And she says to him, this is Valaris, the city of starlight. And Lucian says, and you are the High Lady of the Night Court. And then Rhys arrives in the room. He comes from, like, behind Feyre, and he says, indeed she is. And as soon as Feyre hears her husband, she starts, like, crying, and her knees give out, and, like, ugh, it's so sweet. We're all crying. Like, this part always makes me cry. I think it is so sweet. It's one of my favorite moments in the book. It's not my absolute favorite. It's probably, like, my fourth or fifth favorite moment in the book. I have a lot of faves in this book. I don't think you could probably guess what my favorite is. My favorite moment is, like, a fairly small moment. I think it'll be... It's definitely not in this section. I'm not sure if it's in it'll be in the next video or the last one. I'm not actually sure exactly which part it will fall into, but it's a very small moment. And I would be, like, shocked if you guessed correctly. But this is, like, my fourth or fifth favorite moment. Don't worry, I will be telling you my favorite moments as we come across them. Are my favorite moments from the series all in this book? Yeah, they are. They are. And most of my favorite lines are from this book too. And a lot of them are from Cassian. I love Cassian in this book because we do get the beginnings, the seedlings of the Cassian Nesta romance. And I will eat it up every time. Feyre is on her knees just like weeping to be home again. And then Rhys kneels down next to her and he's like wiping the tears from her face. And then he says, "Get out of my house. Everyone leave." Leave. And he takes Feyre upstairs to their bedroom. And Feyre's like, "Do you want to have like an update about everything that happened when I was in the spring court?" And Rhys says, "There's other things I would rather do first." And they're just in their bedroom. And like Rhys is just like so sweet with her. He talks about how scared he was when the bond went dark. And we learn that he was actually in spring court looking for her. Feyre kind of explains the story of what happened and how the Hybern generals had laced their food with Faebane, but she'd killed them. Don't worry. We learn that Tamlin's court has fallen apart already. Over half of his people refused to do the tie. There are a bunch are like fleeing and heading to other courts because they're so obsessed with Feyre. Feyre, curse breaker. They like love her. And so the fact that Tamlin allowed her to be like forced to flee, to allow Hybern into their home and to allow Hybern to terrorize her to the point that she had to flee, they're not into that. They're leaving. Jurian has already headed back to Hybern, and Ianthe just has this mangled hand, and she won't leave her temple. He's like, interesting. And Feyre's like, "She fell real hard." Rhys is like looking at her arm where she got that arrow through it and explains that Cassian showed him what happened on the ice. Then he like threatens Eris's life for like shooting his wife. And Rhys says to her, "You declared yourself High Lady." And Feyre says, "Was I not supposed to?" And Rhys says, "I've wanted to roar it from the rooftops of Valaris from the moment the priestess anointed you. How typical of you to upend my grand plans." And Feyre is like, "You could go up there right now. I don't think anyone has told it's been like less than an hour. If you head up to the chimney right now and start shouting, I think they will give you the credit. So go ahead." And then Feyre asks after her sisters, and Rhysand explains that they're up at the House of Wind, and he's like, "We can go up there right now to see them if you want," even though like clearly he doesn't want to share her yet. Like he wants a few more moments with his wife, who's just been like in danger for the past 3 weeks, and he just wants to hold her. They like didn't even get to hang out after they got married. He explains that like her sisters are safe, but they're like not doing well. Like they have not taken to the new Fae life they have easily. And Cassian and Azriel are both like well. It was difficult to like rehabilitate Cassian. Like it took a lot of work on his part to get his wings to the point that they are now, even though it's only been like 3 weeks. But like he is doing well. And then Feyre is like, "Where were you when I first got back?" to Rhys. And Rhys is like, "Well, I couldn't let you very well do all the work to undermine our enemies, could I?" He's being like a little teasingly evasive. This like teasing energy is like returning. Very important to Feyre and Rhysand's relationship. He explains he was on the continent at the Human Queen's Palace, just like doing some recon. And Feyre's like kind of pissed off that he was out there alone. Like that seems like a very dangerous thing to do, very risky. And Rhysand explains like, yeah, but things are like very oddly quiet over in the human realm of the continent. And he is like, "I really haven't learned anything. Also, like, I'm so sorry that I wasn't the one to bring you home." And Feyre's like, "Whatever." And Rhys says to her, "I missed you every moment. Your smile, your laugh, your scent." Some other stuff that I'm not going to repeat. "My brave, bold, brilliant mate. I love you." And Feyre's crying, and then Rhysand licks her tears away. Okay. Why are we obsessed with eating tears? It's weird behavior, all of you. All of you that are eating people's tears, that's weird. Stop. And then Rhys has Feyre take a bath because she's kind of like yucky from like, camping and hiking for 6 days. Then it's spicy time. And when they finish spicy time, they're laying in bed next to each other. And Rhys says to her, "I missed you. Every second, every breath, not just this, but talking to you, laughing with you. I missed having you in my bed, but missed having you as my friend even more." The other Archeron sisters, Nesta and Elaine, have been at the House of Wind since Feyre has last seen them. They have not left. And when Feyre and Rhys have like cleaned up and, hooked up a little bit, come back downstairs, Lucien is waiting for them along with Cassian and Azriel. Cassian wants to stir up some silly guy drama. Cassian loves poking and prodding, and Azriel kicks him under the table. And Lucien, as they come down the stairs, Lucien is looking at Feyre and Rhysand's wedding rings. They're holding hands and they have their wedding rings on, and they can also like the mating bond. They're allowing the mating bond to like shine through. Lucien is making a face at their wedding rings. He's like kind of sneering at them, and I do think we should kill him personally. Then Elaine wouldn't have to deal with having this boy who's obsessed with her for no reason. Like, leave Elaine alone. And also, he's annoying me. Why are you sneering? You're lucky you're not in prison. You're like sitting in their living room Have some decorum. I know I just said I support, I like understand that he needs to be on Team Tamlin because Tamlin's his pal. Not anymore. You're in their living room. Rhysand says to Lucien, I assume Cassian or Azriel has explained to you that if you threaten anyone in this house, in this territory, we will show you ways to die that you've never even imagined. I'm sure they have. The boys actually just took Lucien outside, and I hope they beat him up just a little. Hope they, like, kicked him in the stomach a couple times. And were like, if you ever cause any trouble at all for anyone, we'll kill you. I hope that's what they were doing. I don't think it was. I think they were just probably, like, hanging out. And then Rhys assures Lucien that Elaine has been well cared for, and only Rhysand and the inner court and a few trusted servants have even been allowed near her. Like, she's been kept very safe and well protected. Rhys is, like, so upsettingly sympathetic to the mating bond situation. And he says to Lucien, he's like, I totally get where you're coming from. I was in love with Feyre for so long before she returned to the feeling. And Lucien is like, how fortunate that you got what you wanted in the end. Kill him. Cut him up in little pieces. Serve him as a stew. Like, what the heck? Lucien, shut your mouth. They're being so nice to you. Lucien and Rhys bicker back and forth about Feyre and how Rhys sort of stole Feyre out from underneath Tamlin. And Rhys is like, no, that's not what happened. I would have let her stay forever with Tamlin if she would have been happy. But unfortunately, she was miserable and withering away at your guys' house. So I had to snatch her to keep her alive. And Rhysand is actually getting, like, a little bit worked up, thinking about how miserable Feyre had been at their house. He's like, actually, now that you mention it, I could kill you. Lucien it, like, gets better as we go through this book, because Lucien gets more tolerable to me, but, like, I don't love him. Rhys says to Lucien, Feyre did not dishonor or betray Tamlin. I revealed the mating bond months later, and she gave me hell for it. Don't worry. But now that you've found your mate in a similar situation, perhaps you will try to understand how it felt. And if you can't be bothered, then I hope you're wise enough to keep your mouth shut. Because the next time you look at my mate with disdain and disgust, I won't bother to explain it again, and I will rip out your effing throat. You've given him more chances than I would have, Rhys. And then Lucien is like, seems like there's a longer story to be told. Feyre is like, okay, we're going to go visit my sisters. Lucien, you can come if Elaine is up to seeing you. They make it up to House of Wind, my beloved, my girl, my favorite place in this whole series. I love the House of Wind. She is my gal. Feyre asks Rhys to go inside so she can talk to Lucien alone. So Rhys and the boys go inside. And Rhys mentally, as she asks this, says to her as he's walking inside, so you won't have any witnesses when you push him over the railing? Yeah. That's actually the plan. So Lucien and Feyre talk for a little bit while the boys are kind of watching from inside the dining room. And Feyre tells Lucien the story of her relationship with Rhysand from her perspective, starting with Calanmai. Eventually, she even calls Rhys out to explain, like, his side of things. They tell the whole long story of how they ended up together and how, like, it wasn't a betrayal of Tamlin. But, like, honestly, I wish it was. I know, like, cheating is so, like, oh, we don't love cheating in books. You know what? In this situation, I wish she would have cheated on Tamlin. Controversial take. Feyre should have cheated on Tamlin. She should have been kissing Rhys before the wedding. Cassian's also here to add some, like, color to the tale. And then the boys leave again, leaving Feyre and Lucien on the balcony alone. Lucien kind of responds after hearing this whole story. I've seen Rhys being evil, but you tell me it was all a mask to protect this city. It is nicer than literally anywhere I've ever been. Literally anywhere else in the entirety of Prythian. Also, like, it's very clear to Lucien that they, like, love each other, and that the people that she surrounded herself with outside of Rhysand, that Mor and Cass and Az are her family. That she is, like, loved and has found a place here. And he's like, these people that I have spent centuries hating and fearing. And Feyre says, well, like, they're not all like, I don't know if we'd go that far. Like, I think Amren would probably deny that she feels any affection for any of us. And Lucien says, Amren is a bedtime story that they told us as younglings to make us behave. Amren was who would drink my blood and carry me to hell if I acted out of line. And yet there she was, acting more like a cranky old aunt than anything. I hadn't realized I was the villain in your narrative. And Feyre says, you weren't. Not really. Feyre explains that Elaine doesn't know much about him, that, like, obviously, like, she also heard when Lucien was like, you're my mate, but they haven't, like, really talked much about Lucien. They've just talked about the fact that, like, Lucien is the High Lord of Autumn's son, and that he was helpful to Feyre under the mountain, and that you have been, like, working in Spring Court with Tamlin. That's all she knows. She doesn't know about the court politics in Prythian. She doesn't know about the details of our relationship. She just knows, like, the very basics of who you are. And then she's like, here's the plan. I'm going to go in and see my sisters, and then we will come get you if Elaine is ready to see you. Nesta and Elaine have suites upstairs in the House of Wind that are connected to each other and like have like really gorgeous views, because the House of Wind is very high up in the mountains. According to this, it's 1,000 feet up. No, it is 10,000 feet up. 10,000 feet up. Pretty straight vertically. That's nearly 2 miles. I bet you actually can't see much from up there. It's like so high that like you're like, I guess that'd probably be pretty if I could see it. It's so tiny. Anyway, they have gorgeous views, but Nesta is not up in their bedrooms. I mean, there's gorgeous views from everywhere in the House of Wind. She's in the library. Cassian's feeling very tense as they approach. Favorite notes. And we get this comment about Nesta. Nesta curled up in an armchair, a book on her knees, looking, for once, very un-Nesta-like, casual, perhaps relaxed, perfectly contented to be alone. I missed her. Hi, girl. We're back with Nesta Rue. Nesta Rue. Nesta is like a huge part of the rest of these books. Thank goodness. My beloved, she's back. I missed her. I love this like line about her looking very un-Nesta-like, that she's like relaxed. Because this is not a comment just on how relaxed she is in this like Fae body, but like I don't think Feyre really saw Nesta relax very much at home either. We know that Nesta like really hated Papa Archeron, hates Papa Archeron. We don't kind of know what the relationship is as it currently stands, but just had like a very tense relationship with Feyre, a very tense relationship with Papa Archeron, and there is this ability for Nesta to like finally relax. She's in a place where like she's not having to like actively fight anyone in the current moment. She just can like read a book in the library by herself, and I love that for her. Nesta is looking beautiful. Feyre notes that like Nesta was beautiful even as like a human. She had this like striking kind of like angular sort of beauty, but is just like truly stunning as a fae. Clearly there are some vibes between Nesta and Cassian. There are some vibes. And Feyre comes in and Nesta says to her, "You're back. What do you want?" And Feyre says, "At least immortality hasn't changed some things about you." And Nesta goes, "Is there a purpose to this visit, or may I return to my book?" And Cassian picks up her book and is like looking at the cover, and he starts to like tease her about the fact that she's reading a romance book. And he says to Feyre about Nesta, "You haven't missed much while you were off destroying our enemies, Feyre. It's mostly been this." And Nesta goes, "So did you accomplish it?" And Feyre says, "We'll see how it plays out. I made sure Ianthe suffered." And at the sound of Ianthe's name, a hint of rage and fear crept into Nesta's eyes. "Not enough, though." Feyre responds to that like change in her sister's eyes. And then Nesta continues like, "Why are you here?" And Feyre's like, "Well, I wanted to see you. I like have been gone for weeks, so I wanted to check in with you, see how you're doing." And Nesta says, "See if I've accepted my lot and found myself grateful for becoming one of them." And Feyre says, "You're my sister. I watched you hurt them. I wanted to see if you were all right." And Nesta goes, "What do I care? I get to be young and beautiful forever, and I never have to go back to those sycophantic fools over the wall. I get to do as I wish, since apparently no one has any regard here for rules or manners or our traditions. Perhaps I should thank you for dragging me into this. But it's not me you should be chucking on. I had as little at stake on the other side of the wall as I do here." And then Nesta says, she will not leave her room. She will not stop crying. She will not eat or drink or sleep. And Rhys is like, "I have asked you guys over and over again what you need." And Nesta says, "Why should I allow any of you to get near her? It is no one's business but our own." My sweet baby Nesta. Nesta has spent her whole life protecting Elaine. And to see Elaine in like such pain, I think is just like so terribly painful for Nesta. I think particularly because Nesta feels so like comfortable here. Nesta was like totally chill. Living in the Fae world, she like really was not attached. She was just like never attached. She was like really the only person Nesta had in her life was Elaine. Like that's the only friend she's really ever had is Elaine. And to know that Elaine, who Nesta spent so much of her life protecting, is just like a shell of herself, I think is just like truly wrecking Nesta. And the only way Nesta knows how to deal with like pain is by just turning like incredibly spiky and like hurting everyone around her. Again, there are no therapists in Prithian. Please cut these people some slack. Oh, she needs a hug. And Feyre says to Nesta, "Elaine's mate is here." And Nesta does not love that. Now she's big mad. She's like, no way, no, she says. "He is no such thing to her. If you bring that male anywhere near her, And Cassian says, "You'll what, Nesta? You won't join me for practice, so you sure as hell aren't going to hold your own in a fight. You won't talk about your powers, so you aren't going to be able to wield those. And Nesta says, "Shut your mouth. I told you to stay the hell away from me." Cassian says, "You come between a male and his mate, Nesta Archeron, and you are going to learn about the consequences the hard way." Cassian loves to push Nesta's buttons. it is like a little bit of Cassian's way to like show that he still cares. Like he is still here by pushing Nesta's buttons. Nesta is trying to push everyone away from her, and Cassian refuses to be. He refuses to let those barbs coming from Nesta stop him. Is it exactly what Nesta needs? Maybe not, but like I think the reminder that like that he is like not hurt by her, that he like is resilient enough to like come back is like something that is important to Nesta. But also, I do think there is, and we'll talk about this as we go on, there's some like recognition of this, that like these girls have like really have had all agency stripped from them, all agency over what is happening to them as like people and over their bodies. They've been like taken from their homes and completely changed and taken from everyone that they like loved and knew and like locked in this house where they haven't really been allowed to do anything. I mean, not that they would want to, but like just like all agency has been stripped from them. And now Elaine has this like fated mate, this person that she is supposed to love, and we will come to find out and talk about the fact that like she was supposed to get married in a week to another man, and now they're like, no, this guy is gonna be your new guy for your new body. There is this like a sense of like really grappling with that, and I really hope Elaine's book, whether she winds up a Lucian or not in Elaine's book, and because that is one of the questions, is like who is Elaine gonna end up with. I do really hope we like really deeply grapple with this idea of fated mates, because it's a trope that I love. I adore a fated mates trope, but I do think in a lot of ways it feels very like troubling when put in kind of contrast with a lot of ACOTAR, because I think a lot of the story of ACOTAR is about these women and their relationships with particularly like their with their like bodies and the power they wield as like physical humans. Physical, I guess they're not humans, but fae. Like the physicality of them. I've talked a lot about this, that I think ACOTAR does this particularly well. This like conversation around like what it means to be powerful as like a woman, and I think the fated mates thing kind of undercuts this in a way in which there's like choice that is taken away and agency that is taken away when we're like, no, this guy, he's the guy for you. And so I like really hope that Sarah, and I kind of trust that Sarah will explore this like quite deeply. And again, I don't think it necessarily means that like Elaine shouldn't be with Lucian, although in this section Azriel does have some real good moments, but I do think it's something that like would make sense to kind of like pick apart and like really interrogate. And I hope and trust that Sarah will do so in our Elaine book. Anyway, Feyre says to Nesta, if Elaine is not up for it, then she won't see him. I won't force the meeting on her. But if he does wish to see her, Nesta, I'll ask on his behalf. But the decision will be hers. And Nesta's like, wasn't he the guy who sold us out to Hybern? And Feyre's like, well, sort of. It's like a little bit more complicated than that, but like, yeah, kinda. And Nesta's like, okay, well, it will certainly be more complicated when father returns and finds us gone. What do you plan to tell him about all of this? And I know that Nesta's been stewing over this for months. She's been like, what are we gonna tell our freaking dad? And Feyre, I don't think, has thought about this one time. Feyre says, seeing as he hasn't sent word from the continent in months, I'll worry about that later. Feyre lives in the moment. Okay. Nesta only shook her head, turning towards the chair in her book, and said, I don't care. Do what you want. Oh. My baby, she does care. She cares so deeply. What was it in that other book? The last book, and where she's like talking to Cassian about Nesta, and she's like, I think Nesta cares like so deeply about things, and she like cannot let people know that like she cares so deeply. My like little baby nugget. And Cassian also is thinking the same thing I am, and he's like gazing at Nesta with like longing and sorrow. He knows that she's hurting. Feyre heads up to Elaine's room. Elaine is upstairs and she's got all the windows slung like open as possible. Not actually like physically open. She does check later in the book to make sure the windows do not open. She's a little worried her sister might jump out them. But like all the curtains open. She's got as much sunlight as she can flooding into the room. And Elaine is sitting at the window. She's in a robe and she's looking like quite miserable. And it's like very clear that this is why Nesta is so mad, because Elaine is a shell of herself. Feyre comes up and like very gently is like, Elaine, I'm back. And Elaine just says to her, I want to go home. And Feyre says, I know. And Elaine says, he'll be looking for me. We were supposed to be married next week. Rip my heart out of my chest. This is so devastating to me. You know how, like, okay, so the next book is the Elaine book. We're going to talk about Elaine so much. The next book is the Elaine book, and, like, the big drama is, like, whether Elaine is going to end up with Lucian or Azriel. We, like, again, see the seeds of both of these relationships in this part, in this section. And I think we're not considering a third option. I think it would be, like, so fascinating and interesting to really explore this relationship she has with this human man. What if He enters the ring. Guys, I haven't read ahead. I don't remember exactly what happens with Elaine and this man. If he turns out to be like really a scumbag in the like next part of the book, I'll figure it out when we get there, but we should forget about him. And Feyre apologizes. Feyre's like, I'm sorry. And Elaine says, everyone keeps saying that, but it doesn't fix anything, does it? Feyre like feels terrible. Like she can't even breathe. She's like so upset by this. She spent most of her young life kind of like making sure that Feyre, or that Nesta and Elaine were like, well, that they like ate food, you know, like she hunted for them. I think there is this real sense where these sisters really like looked after each other. I think all in their own way. And I know haters are going to say Nesta didn't do anything, and haters can leave. I think Nesta protected Elaine and trusted Feyre to take care of herself. And I also don't think we got a full picture of like what was actually happening at the Archeron household in terms of like who was doing some of the other chores and like dealing with some of the other things. I do think more than just Feyre was doing work there. But these sisters at the end of the day, like they had to rely on each other. And I think it really like wrecks them in a particular way to see Elaine so clearly broken. Like I think it affects both Feyre and Nesta like quite deeply to see their sister so clearly hurt. And then Rhys says to her, can we get you anything, Elaine? And Elaine says, I want to go home. And Feyre's like, you know what, maybe actually this is not like a great time to ask about Lucien. You know what, no Lucien today. That's actually, we're gonna skip that. But unfortunately Lucien like wandered in. He did not listen to instructions. He wandered and he's standing in the doorway and he can feel the despair leeching off of leeching. I don't think that's the word I meant. He can feel the despair coming from Elaine. And we get this little paragraph. Elaine had always been sweet and gentle, and I had considered it a different sort of strength, a better strength, to look at the hardness of the world and choose over and over to love and to be kind. She had always been so full of light. Perhaps that is why she now kept the curtains open, to fill the void that existed where all that light had once been, and now nothing remained. Rhys leads Lucien over to the suite. He'll be staying at the House of Wind, which is like a floor above where the sisters are staying, and Rhys gives him a little tour, offers him some clothes, and Lucien's like, well, how much is this going to cost me? Like, what is the cost of this place? And Rhys says, you are a High Lord's son. It would be bad manners not to house and clothe you in your time of need. Lucien doesn't love the vibe of like Rhys doing charity work for him, but like Rhys is kind of enjoying taunting Lucien, as he should. And Rhys is like, okay, we'll be back for dinner in a couple hours. Like get yourself cleaned up, do whatever you need to do. If you need anything, pull that rope by the door and servants will come and help you. And Lucien says, what of Elaine? And Rhys says to Feyre mentally, like, it's your call. You get to decide. Call over what? No, it's Elaine's call. And she needs to be left alone. Like, she does not need a boy being like, hi, hey girl, hey. And she'll be like, I'm getting married next week to a rando. I was supposed to get married. I'm not looking for a new boyfriend currently. Wait, my note here says, Nesta and I will push you down the spiral staircase. That's right, Lucien. Nesta, if you try to go bother Elaine, Nesta and me, we're going to push you down the spiral staircase 10,000 times of you conking your head as you tumble down to Rita's. Feyre's like, okay, for now, leave Elaine alone. She actually says, I need to think about it until I figure out what to do with her, with Nesta. Stay out of their way. You can't winnow, and because the house is warded, and there's only one staircase, and it's warded and guarded, so don't do anything stupid. And Lucien's like, so I'm a prisoner. My notes in this, I was in such a mood. Yeah, sit down and shut up, or we'll put you in a real cell. We don't hear. No one says that. Feyre says, no, but understand that you may be her mate. Elaine is my sister, and I will do what I must to protect her from further harm. Lucien's like, I would never hurt her. And Feyre's like, just leave them alone for 2 hours. Is that much to ask, Lucien? Take a bath and leave my sister alone. You can do literally whatever else. And Lucien says, like, thank you as they leave. And then they head over to Amren's loft. The townspeople are, like, waving as Feyre and Rhys fly overhead. They're like, hey, guys! Welcome back. Mor and Azriel are waiting for them at Amren's house. And Amren is like, I think you should just like kill Baron, who's currently the High Lord of Autumn Court, and set up the handsome one as the High Lord of Autumn Court. Self-imposed exile or no, it will make life easier. Love that idea, Amren. Amren, the only one out here who does work. Amren, like, truly does, the only one who does, like, politics for this place. Her politics are a little ruthless. They probably involve a little more murder than politics generally should, as a rule. But I appreciate the effort. And then they start talking about the drama that is probably ensuing at the House of Wind in the current moment. And Feyre's like, Nesta is probably guarding Elaine. And Cassian's like, can't guard Elaine. She doesn't have any training. She won't let me train her. And we learn that Cassian has been going up there every other day to, like, strengthen his wings back up because it is like a long flight, but also so they could bicker because he's in love with Nesta. And Cassian says, I don't blame her. She was violated. Her body stopped belonging wholly to her. And I am going to peel the King of Hybern's skin off his bones the next time I see him. Cassian's like, yeah, she's cranky. I've been cranky too. She, like, her body has been taken away from her. And, like, Cassian wants to train her because he wants to give her that power back over her body. He's like, I'm going to train her so she can, again, like, feel like her body belongs to her and that she has power over it. They do start talking about the like, war plans, upcoming plans for the War of Hybern, which is, like, fairly vague. The plans are at this point. They've been keeping an eye on the Book of Breathings, which is currently sitting on Amren's nightstand with, like, a cup of blood sitting on top of it. And the book starts talking to Feyre. It goes, hello, sweet-faced liar. Hello, princess with... And then Rhys says, that book has been speaking on it. Amren tells the book to shut up. And then Rhys explains that the book has been speaking on occasion since the two halves have been put back together. And Feyre's like, does it say anything of use? And Amren says, utter nonsense. It just likes to hear itself talk, like most of the people cramping up my apartment. Feyre is, like, brought some information on the movements they've noticed of the Hybern's army so far. And Cassian explains, as Feyre kind of, like, relays the information she learned from the Hybern generals. He says, we barely stand a chance of surviving Hybern's armies on our own. If armies from Valhalla, Montserrat, and Rask join them, we're toast. And as explained, that Valhalla has the numbers, Montserrat has the money, and Rask has both, so would be bad news. And they don't really have any other allies potentially overseas. And Feyre brings up the idea of Miriam and Draken, and they're like, well, we sent Azriel over there to, like, chat with them to see what they would think about helping us out, but the whole island was abandoned. Like, it was empty, but there was, like, no sign of attack. It didn't look like they had been, like, taken over or attacked. Like, it was just empty, a sort of Roanoke sort of situation. Rhys doesn't think they would have run away if they had heard about Hybern, though, so, like, truly we have no idea what happened to Miriam and Draken. Total mystery over there. At the meantime, their, like, main goal is to make sure none of those territories on the continent actually wind up joining with Hybern. So one of the things that Rhys was working on while Feyre was in Springcourt was going to the continent and trying to get the people of Hybern to, like, be cranky and not want to join this military force. But the citizens of Hybern really seem to want human slaves. They're, like, really pro going back to slavery. And Amren says, fools, economics. She, like, kind of explains that the economic situation has been, like, quite downhill since the last big war. And so poverty is, like, on the rise. And then Moore explains that there are a lot of high fae that really believe that, like, humans should be their property and did not like the fact that humans were taken from them and are still, like, pretty upset about it. And Rhys explains that the king has encouraged these limited worldviews. He didn't expand any of their trade routes post-war, and they've become, like, quite isolationist. The king of Hybern clearly has been, like, kind of, like, fostering within his people this, like, thirst for war. Like, this is one of the things that, like, didn't go super well in the last war, and he, like, wanted to make sure it didn't happen again this time. And then Amren kind of talks about how, like, Prithian is going to be, like, the first stage of this, like, larger plan from King of Hybern to show what happens to high fae territories that defend the treaty. They, like, kind of try to fill us in on continent politics, and I'm like, I don't care what's happening over there. I don't really get it. Currently, as it stands, they want to keep those other territories busy, those secondary territories that Hybern is trying to ally with, busy by making a mess of things in their politics and by playing them against each other. So hopefully they will be so busy fighting each other that they won't even bother Prithian. And then Feyre asks about the human queens, but apparently they've just been, like, locked away in their castle. We literally don't know what happened. Amren and Feyre then talk about Hybern's plan to break through the wall and how the fact that the cauldron needs to use the holes means that something is wrong with the cauldron, because the cauldron should be able to just rip through the wall anywhere. And Amren is trying to figure out, like, what happened. She suspects that, like, it used too much power turning Feyre's sisters, and so now is, like, in this weakened state. And Amren is not sure if they're going to be able to fix it. Like, Hybern is going to be able to fix it. And then Feyre's like, should we just try to nullify the cauldron again? And everyone's like, no, remember how badly it went last time. Also, like, the King of Hybern is, like, keeping such a close watch on it. There's, like, really no way for us to get to it. And then Feyre's like, well, maybe I could fix the holes in the wall and prevent them from, like, having those as a resource. And Amren is like, maybe. Honestly, like, your sisters would have a better chance of being able to fix the holes in the wall because they're made out of the same magic the cauldron is made out of. And as we know, in a Sarah J. Maas novel, light calls to what? That's right, like calls to light. And Feyre's like, no, my sisters will play no part in this. They, like, helped once. I made them let us use their house for, like, a meeting. And, like, now they're fae. So, like, no, I won't risk them again. And Amren is like, you sound just like Tamlin. And then Rhys freaks out. Moore freaks out. Everyone freaks out. They're like, don't say that about Feyre. She is nothing like that man. Moore, in fact, goes, if you're cranky because you're hungry, tell us. But if you say anything like that again, I will throw you in the goddamn Sidra. And then Amren says, I'd like to see you try. And then Amren goes on and is like, okay, if you don't want to tell them they have to, Like, you give them the opportunity. Like, we will need your sisters at the very least to help us convince people that Hybern is evil. Like, Reese has been playing the bad guy for all these years, and it's going to be hard for a lot of people to believe that, like, actually he's just been pretending to be the bad guy, and now they need to ally with him to defeat a bigger bad guy. And Moore makes Amren apologize, but Feyre's like, no, you know what, she's right. Like, I should give my sisters a choice. She's like, I will ask them, see if they have any sort of powers, see if they'd be willing to talk to others about what they endured, but I will not force them to help if they do not wish to participate. The choice will be theirs, but I will make our desperation clear. And then Amren's like, you know what? A good start might be getting them out of that house. Being cooped up like that never helped anybody. They, like, probably need some fresh air. I want us to remember this moment, that, like, being trapped in a house is really not, like, a great healing methodology, because it seems we will forgot that. In one book from now, we will forget that, like, being locked in the House of Wind will not be, like, a great healing property. And Reese says, I'm not sure Valaris is entirely prepared for Nesta Archeron. He says that as, like, the sassy little side comment. And Feyre gets a little bit peeved at that. She's like, no. My sister's not a feral animal that we're, like, unleashing. Like, she's my sister. The topic is kind of, like, shifted, but, like, tensions do rise between Feyre and Reese about this. Moore asks about Elaine, and Feyre explains that she's probably not ready to, like, help with anything. Elaine does not really seem well enough to deal with any, like, telling people about what happened to her, or doing any extra magic or anything like that. And she's like, she was supposed to be getting married next week. And Amren's like, she keeps saying so over and over again. And Feyre says, hey, careful. Do not talk about her sisters. You guys might be her family, but those guys were her family first. So the current plans as it stands is to patch up the wall before the cauldron can break it open. Cassian is getting the Illyrian forces, like, ready to go at the moment's notice. And then Rhysand is also planning a large meeting with all of the High Lords to see kind of, like, what the alliances will look like within Prythian. Cassian carries Feyre back up to the House of Wind a couple hours later for dinner, and Nuala and Cerdwyn, the Shadow Wraiths, are waiting for Feyre, and they help her get all ready and change for dinner. Rhysand is being, like, a little weird. Vibes have been weird between them since Feyre snapped at him about Nesta, and Feyre's, like, a little bit nervous about it. She doesn't love the tensions between them. Feyre is wearing, like, slippers as they, like, fly up to the House of Wind, and Cassian's, like, snorting about it. And then Feyre asks Cassian about what his thoughts are. She asks, would you use Nesta to help fix the wall? And Cassian says yes, not only for our sake, but to give her something to do. She'll destroy herself if she's just cooped up there. And Feyre says, the day she was changed, I felt something different with her. I fought against the tensing in my muscles as I recalled those moments, the screaming and the blood and the nausea as I watched my sisters taken against their will, as if I could do anything. I swallowed down the fear, the guilt. It was like everything she was, that steel and that fire, it became magnified. Cataclysmic, like looking at a house cat and suddenly finding a panther standing there instead. I shook my head as if it would clear away the memory of the predator, the rage simmering in those blue-gray eyes. And Cassian says to her, I will never forget that moment for as long as I live. And he explains to her that he can feel, like, this powerful, this, like, power, this, like, rage and power in Nesta when it is, like, poised at him. And Cassian's like, I don't think she'll ever forgive me for what happened to her and Elaine, and mostly to Elaine. And Feyre's like, why? What do you mean? Like, you were, like, half dead on the floor, wings shredded. Like, why would she blame you for this? Cassian says, I made her a promise, and when it mattered, I didn't keep it. And then Feyre asks, like, why do you bother? Why do you bother going up there? Again and again, as she just, like, rips at you every time. And Cassian says, because I can't stay away. No, he can't. Nesta joins them for dinner, and, like, Feyre's kind of surprised at this, but, like, okay, welcome, Nesta. Elaine doesn't join them, but Lucien is there too, and Lucien is like, hey, can I just ask, like, what the dress code is for dinner? Because Feyre is in, like, pajamas, and Moore is in a literal gown, and so he's like, I just, like, kind of don't know what the vibe is. And Feyre's like, whatever you want to wear. Lucien and Feyre, like, chat, and she offers him a tour of the house, and Lucien changes the topic, and he says, how small and isolated our home must have been for you once you saw this. Who could have compared? He's like, you only like Reese because he's rich. That's the implication I'm getting here. Nesta arrives looking stunning. stunning, and Cassian looked like someone had punched him in the gut. As he should. Everyone take note. And Morris goes up to Nesta and goes, where did the dress come from? I want one. And Feyre, like, standing next to Nesta, says, I assume Reese dug it up. And Moore says, he gets all the credit for the clothes, but he won't tell me where he finds them. And Moore says, it's a good thing we're the same size, or we're not the same size, Nesta, or I'd be tempted to steal that right off of you. And Nesta says, fortunately for you, I do not return the sentiment. Oh my gosh. Moore is wearing like a very revealing gown. And Nesta, in the human world, we cover a little bit more skin than I think in the Fae world. And Nesta's a little scondy by what Moore wears. Nesta finds herself a spot. She sits down at the table. Feyre sits next to her sister and like is like, hey, I like really think Moore just like was trying to be nice and give you a compliment. And Nesta goes, I don't care. Okay. Amryn sits across the table from them, and Nesta's like, hey, why do your eyes glow? And Amryn says, no one has ever asked me that. It was the one part of me that the containment spell could not quite get right. The one glimpse into what lurks beneath. And then Nesta goes, what's beneath? And everyone at the table goes still, because, like, nobody asks Amryn these questions. Like, everyone is scared of Amryn. Way too scared to ask these questions. And Amryn says, they never dared ask me that either, because it is not polite to ask, and they are afraid. We are the same, you and I. Not in flesh, not in the thing that prowls beneath our skin and bones. But I see the Colonel girl. You did not fit the mold they shoved you into, the path you were born upon and forced to walk. You tried, and yet you could not fit. And then the path changed. I know what it is to be that way. I remember, long ago as it was. Nesta says, I don't know what you're talking about. And Amryn says, when you erupt, girl, make sure it is felt across the worlds. Amryn sees Nesta. Lucien is like very confused by like every aspect of this dinner. He is like, Rhys is like sitting next to his wife. He's not at the head of the table. And Lucien like winds up at the head of the table, and like that's kind of confusing. He's just like confused by everything. Nesta is just like watching everything that's happening, and she's not eating. And so Feyre takes it upon herself to start filling her sister's plate for her, as she always has. As she always has. Nesta's not eating. I'm going to make sure Nesta eats. And then Nesta says to her, I understand what you meant about the food. Because back when Feyre introduced Rhysand and Cassian and Azriel to her sisters at their house, they had a meal, and the boys, Feyre like really like struggled to like eat it because she was like, it is so unflavorful. And she's like, you would understand if you came to the Fae world. And now Nesta does understand. At the time, Nesta was like, I have no interest in going to the Fae worlds. I hate you guys. Like, Cassian and Feyre are like chatting back and forth. They're making plans to restart her training again with Cassian. And then we're like back to the classic like inner circle banter. Lucien is like very surprised by it, and Nesta just seems to be staring at her plate. She seems unengaged with everything. They start talking about this meeting that is upcoming with all the High Lords. And Lucien asks if Rhys and Feyre plan to hide Feyre's magic when she goes to the meetings, that she has these like little bits of magic from all the courts. And Lucien says, my father would likely join with Hybern if he thought he stood a chance of getting his power back that way, by killing you. And Feyre is like, well, I don't, like, maybe we would hide it, but like your brothers have already seen me, so they might know. And Lucian's like, okay, well, that's step one. Figure out if my brothers know that you have Autumn Court magic in you. They're kind of dumb, so like maybe they don't. And then build your plan from there. And Moore's like, Eris might keep that info secret if he thinks that info might be useful to him later on. And Lucien says, maybe we'll need to figure it out either way. And then Lucien volunteers to like help Azriel out with his work in Autumn Court that he needs to do to figure out kind of what information they in Autumn Court have access to. But before that, there's another meeting they need to have so soon. They need to go have a meeting with the Court of Nightmares to go talk to Moore's dad, Keir, about the coming war and making sure his Darkbringer Legion will help them, because it is separately governed. In fact, Nesta goes, aren't you the boss of them? Like, aren't you in charge? Why do you have to go ask another guy if you can use one of your armies? Cassian explains, unfortunately, there are protocols in place between our two subcourts regarding this sort of thing. They mostly govern themselves, with Moore's father as their steward. Obviously, the evil guys govern themselves, and we stay in the nice city, and we govern ourselves. It's so nice. And Rhys explains that the Darkbringer Legion has the right to refuse to serve in wars that are outside of Night Court borders. So they have to protect the Night Court, but outside of that, Keir is in charge of deciding whether they will participate in other wars. Apparently they have refused to participate in multiple wars. Like, this is not something that is unheard of. And Moore is like pretty sure Keir is going to say no to them. And Rhys is like, well, I'm going to have to find some way to convince him otherwise. Keir did fight with good guys in the last war, but the Darkbringer Legion was not very well behaved. And so even if they do get them on board with them, they're going to have to do like a lot of work to make sure the Darkbringers do not cause drama within the larger armies. Moore's like, I don't think you're going to be in the position to make new rules for these guys. Moore's trying to like get everyone on board with her. She's like, this seems like a bad idea. This doesn't seem like it's going to be helpful. This isn't going to work. But like, no one will help. No one will back her up. And they're like, Moore, you don't have to come. And Moore's like, obviously I'm going to come with you guys. And then Cassian kind of confirms her training time with Feyre. And then he's like, Nesta, you want to come train with me and your sister? Nesta does not. And then Feyre announces at the table, I want to learn how to fly. And everyone is super surprised by this announcement. Probably most of all Nesta, who is like, what the hell do you mean? You want to learn how to fly? You have wings? And Feyre explains that she can shapeshift and she can like grow wings. And she's like, I would like to learn how to fly because it might be helpful to be able to, in case of like war or whatever, like to be able to fly with the Illyrian legions. And Cassian's like, probably you will not be ready to fly in battle by the time war arrives here, since we've only got a few weeks or months till war's coming. Like, we don't have that long, because you would have to fly not only yourself, but like your army, or your armor and your shield. Like, it's heavy. So you like really probably aren't strong enough to be able to do that. Although if you're shapeshifting, can you just shapeshift your muscles strong? I feel like you could. But Azriel agrees to teach her because he remembers learning. And Cassian's like, well, I could do it. Like, I've taught a lot of kids how to fly. And Azriel's like, no, but it's very different to teach a small child. It is very different to teach a child and to teach an adult. And like, Azriel knows what it is to learn how to fly older because of like his past. Azriel was like locked in a room until he was like 15, 11, somewhere in his early teens. And so he didn't learn how to fly until he was like full grown teen. And so he's going to do it because he knows what it is to learn as an adult. And he says, we'll meet after your training with Cassian. And then Feyre turns to Nesta and kind of explains the situation with the walls and the King of Hybern and asks if she will help close the holes in the walls. And Amren offers to start training Nesta and says that she, as like part of her training, Amren and Nesta will come with them to the Court of Nightmares to get a feel for the kind of power she might encounter. The Court of Nightmares should have some like wards and magic and things that are similar to what the wall was created out of. And Feyre's like very freaked out by the idea of bringing her sister to the Court of Nightmares. And Nesta's like, what if we just killed the King of Hybern? Idea. Have you guys thought about that? Just a suggestion. And Amren goes, if you want to go kill the King of Hybern, knock yourself out. She says, if you want the killing blow, girl, it's yours. And then Elaine walks into the dining room and is like, what happened to the human... She like wanders in, looking confused, dazed and confused, and goes, what happened to the human queens? Were they made immortal? And then Azriel responds to her and says, reports have been murky. It's like not clear. They like haven't left their palace. And Nesta says, okay, by the end of this war, I want them dead. The king, the queens, all of them. Promise me that you will kill them all, and I will help you patch up the wall. I'll train with her. She gestures to Amren. I'll go to the hewn city or whatever it is. I'll do it, but I need you to promise me that. And Feyre's like, okay, fine. We can kill them all. We might need you also to join this meeting with the High Lords and explain what happened to you, to like explain what like Hybern is capable of doing. And Nesta immediately is like, no, I won't do that. And Feyre says, okay, you don't mind going to like fix the wall or like going to the Court of Nightmares, but like speaking to people in like a very cordial meeting is where you draw the line. People's lives might just depend on the success in this meeting with the High Lords. Like, we need their alliance, and your words might be what convinces them. And Nesta says, don't talk down to me. The answer is no. And Feyre says, I understand what happened was horrible. And Nesta goes, you have no idea what it was or was not. None. And I am not going to grovel like one of those children of the blessed, begging High Fae, who would have gladly killed me as a mortal to help us. I'm not going to tell them that story. My story. And Feyre's like, well, the High Lords might not believe us. Like, you might be a valuable witness. And then Nesta says, that is not my problem if you are unreliable. I will help you with the wall. But I am not going to whore my story around to everyone on your behalf. And if you even dare suggest that Elaine do such a thing, I will rip out your throat. And then Nesta gets up and leaves the room. And after she's left, Moore picks up a bottle of wine and like puts it in front of Feyre and says, it's fine if you just drink directly from the bottle. That night, Rhys and Feyre are just like walking home together through the streets of Valaris. And Rhys says to Feyre, I'd say Nesta rivals Amren for sheer bloodthirstiness. I like really want us to remember all of these little comments that Rhys makes about Nesta like pretty constantly that like they like bother Feyre. So I imagine he says more of them when she's not in the room when we get to Silver Flames. And people are like, Rhys doesn't even seem like the same guy. He seems like a totally different character in this book. No, Rhys and Nesta literally have wanted to murder each other from the first moment they saw each other. They like truly hate each other, and so obviously the Nesta's understanding of Rhys is probably gonna be pretty different from Feyre's understanding of Rhysand. Walking around, and there are definitely still some spots where Valaris is damaged from the attack on Hybern that happened a few months ago, but like things are like recovering like pretty quickly. Feyre and Rhys talk about Nesta and how like difficult she is, and how Feyre should like manage this relationship between her family and politics, and like how to deal with that, both kind of with her sisters, but also like with Rhysand and with the inner court in general. And then Rhysand apologizes for what he said about Nesta earlier. He's like, I crossed a little bit of a line there, and I like want to apologize for that. And Feyre's like, I didn't mean to undermine you afterwards. I understand that we should have a solid unified front when we're in front of other people. And Reese says, we don't have to worry about it. Not amongst family. Like, not when we're with our family. And he goes on to say that, like, she should feel totally comfortable pushing him and questioning him both in public and in private if she's comfortable with that. Like, that is important to him. He's like, I don't want you to think that, like, you can't question me, or when I do something that I shouldn't, that you should not step in. Like, that never should happen. And Feyre is like, yeah, but I really think it is important that we have, like, this unified front, especially right now as we're, like, entering this war and we're like newer leaders. I think that's important. They can use the bond to kind of, like, argue with each other. And Rhysand says, okay, call me on my BS whenever you want. I insist, actually, because you're my equal. And as much as that means having each other's backs in public, it also means that we grant each other the gift of honesty, of truth. Feyre's like, okay, let's test this out. I do think we actually need to be incredibly careful when we're, like, dealing with the Kier and Mor situation. One, because he is untrustworthy, and two, like, I think we do need to walk a delicate balance when it comes to Mor. Kier is, like, an actual monster, and, like, brutally, I mean, like, the descriptions we get of what happened to Mor after she slept with Cassian are just, like, horrifying, and it was overseen by her father. Like, to have a sign nailed to your body after you're, like, brutally beaten, like, that's horrifying. And obviously Kira's, like, someone in power and someone they, like, have to interact with, but, like, that Mor's feelings around that need to be, like, kept as a priority. Will Rhys listen? No, but whatever. And then they switch to chatting about the High Lord meeting. They chat about whether Tamlin will be coming, and Feyre is like, I don't think he'll come because he's allied with Hybern. And Rhys is like, I don't know, maybe. He explains that, like, during the High Lord meetings, they have a spell that, like, kind of locks them all into a ceasefire, and if anyone attacks, it, like, demands a very steep cost. We're not told exactly what that is, but, like, a steep one. And Tamlin has to be invited. Like, the invitation has to be offered to him, because otherwise it just, like, creates a situation that is even more hostile. He has to be invited to this meeting. But also they're, like, really worried about the Tarquin and Baron situations as well. Tarquin, Summer Court, does have blood rubies out against them, and Baron is just, like, mean. And then they talk about the fact that Feyre is going to go help Amren research the next day, and they chat about whether they should trust Lucien, whether that's someone they should trust. And Rhys says he only trusts them because they have Elaine. So since Elaine is, like, with them, and, like, Lucien would be unwilling to lose Elaine, like, they can trust Lucien essentially because they have, like, the biggest bargaining block. Feyre doesn't love that they're just using Elaine as a bargaining chip in this whole situation, but, like, what are you gonna do? And then Feyre asks if Rhys enjoys this sort of game of politics, and Rhys says, sometimes. Right now I don't, not when the risks are this high, when I have so much to lose. We will keep planning for the future, war or no war. I will keep planning for our future. We deserve to be happy, and I will fight with everything I have to ensure it. Feyre says to him, we will fight, not just you, not anymore. And they're standing near this restaurant that they ate at in ACOWAR, and Rhys recounts the story about how the first time they ate there, it was, like, the first time that Feyre had seemed like she was alive again after kind of withering away with Tamlin in the Spring Court. And he remembers being so relieved to see her just, like, laughing and smiling with his friends that he almost threw up on the table. Like, he was just, like, overcome with it. And then Feyre says to him, walk me through the rainbow. You in this city helped wake me up, helped bring me back to life. I will fight with everything I have to Rhys, everything. It's trading time at the House of Wind with Cassian and Feyre. Cassian's, like, letting her know that today will be a review of the basics, and Cassian's, like, clearly upset about something. And Feyre's like, what's the deal here? And it turns out that he's, like, really mad that Rhys and her kept her status as a High Lady secret from them when they went to Hybern. Like, the fact that that was kept from the inner court is, like, really upsetting to him. And Feyre's like, well, what does it really change? Like, I was his mate when I went in. I don't see how being a High Lady alters anything. And Cassian says it does, because as his mate, you were still his to protect. Oh, don't get that look. He's yours to protect too. I would have laid down my life for you as his mate and as your friend, but you were still his. As High Lady, you are mine. And as Asriel's and Mor's and Amren's, you belong to all of us, and we belong to you. I would not have put you in so much danger. I love this line. I think it's so sweet. It is one of my favorite lines in the entire book. this comment of, like, no, but, like, as his High Lady, you were his. Like, you are ours. You are our High Lady. And just, like, I just think it's, like, I don't know what about it is exactly, but it, like, gets me in the guts. And Cassian explains that, like, him and Rhys have already, talked it out because he was not happy with Rhys either about this choice. And then Cassian says, you didn't think you were essential. You saved our asses, yes, but you didn't think you were essential here. Like, we needed you here. Like, I'm so glad you got to do what you needed to do in the Spring Court, but, like, you are essential here. And they kind of argue back and forth a bit about what she risked by going to the spring court alone. And then Cassian says to her, Rhysand pulled that same shit 50 years ago when he went to that damn party Amarantha threw. And Cassian kind of like recounts what it felt like. Rhysand told them through the bond that he had been trapped by Amarantha and had tied their hand. How the whole world had gone quiet the moment he had heard in his head, in Cassian's head. He just was like, there was just like to feel so helpless and to like know that like my High Lord was like in this place of danger. My head just like went quiet. And he said the same thing happened when he found out that Feyre was in the spring court. Like his head just like went quiet. This like sense of just like total inability to do anything as like the most important people in your lives and your court's lives are put in this like place of incredible danger. This did make me cry. Okay. Sarah makes me cry so much more. Catch me not crying would be the tougher challenge at this point. Not, I'm just kidding. I've teared up a couple times. And then Cassian's like, we're a team. And then Cassian reminds them that they're a team and that they like need to work together. And Rhys isn't great for delegating, but he like Feyre can ask for help. And should. Nesta comes out onto the roof where the training ring is while the duo is feeling a little emotional. And then Cassian turns to her and says, care to join? Nesta says, love this. It doesn't look like you're exercising anything other than your mouths. Then we get some gorgy Nesta Cassian banter. Obviously gorgeous. And then Feyre, as this is happening, Feyre dials her mental telephone and calls up Rhys to come pick her up and save her from the Nessian banter. But he's in a meeting. He can't leave. Boo. Nesta's getting ready to meet with Amren. Anyway, she's up here to meet Amren because they're going to do some magic practice so Nesta can get ready to repair the wall. And then Az arrives instead. Az got sent by Rhys to come rescue Feyre. He says, we had to move our flying lessons earlier. He's just coming to rescue her. He takes her out to a lake to practice. And so in case she falls while she's flying, she can fall in the water. Az is like, I left Amren at the house. Like, Cassian will be fine. Amren will come take Nesta away in just a minute. I told Amren to wait, though. Give him just like a couple minutes to pick her first. First thing first, Feyre's got to summon her wings, and she's a little out of practice. And Azriel is so patient with her. He's like super patient, like giving her tips as she like creates her wings using her shape-shifting magic. And he kind of explains to her that he is meeting with Lucien that afternoon to plan their like autumn court reconnaissance missions. And Azriel says to her, I know you're not Illyrian, but amongst their kind, it's considered inappropriate to touch someone's wings without permission, especially females. And so he's like, can I please touch your wings? Assesses her wings to like make sure she's like built them correctly and strong enough. And he like adjusts a couple things and has her like shapeshift a couple of things. And it's a very physically demanding process to like use the wings. It's like a very much a whole body workout. Like it involves all of the muscles of her back and her core and her legs to like kind of move these giant wings and also to like maintain her balance with them. Azriel compliments her wings. He says she did a great job making them, and he says it's because she has an artist's attention to detail. Oh, he's such a sweet little soul. And then lesson 1 of her wing lessons is to not drag your wings on the ground because it looks lazy. Also, you could hurt them. They're like quite fragile, and there could be pointy things on the ground. You don't want to scrape them up. She's like kind of moving around with her wings, and she does fall over as she like moves them because she's like not strong enough yet to like maintain her balance. Today is just like focused on like lifting her wings, folding and unfolding her wings, and spreading them. Just like practicing moving the wings. They're not even flying. They're just moving them around. That afternoon, after all of her lessons are done, Feyre heads to the House of Wind library, and she's never been to a library before. Except Tamlin's library. Like, sorry, that is a library. What do you mean? She's like, I've never been to a public library before. Okay, this is really not a public library either. Like, it is inside the House of Wind, which is like, fairly difficult to access. It's not like we're letting everyone in willy-nilly. This is not the New York Public Library. Feyre is already feeling like quite sore from her flying lessons. It'll just continue to get worse. We learned that like before the war, the continent had a ton of libraries, but after the wall fell, or after the wall was built, scholars had to evacuate with the books, and they burned the libraries. They burned the libraries down because the Fae had built the libraries and humans were not allowed inside of them. And so once humans were kind of allowed to live in parts of the continent, they like burned the libraries down rather than allow humans access to the information. Rhys is the one telling her this. Feyre asks what happened to the half Fae, half human people after the war. And Rhys is like, well, it was like not good. Like most of them went with the humans, but like the humans were like very anti-Fae after this big war, and so they would often be killed for being part Fae, and then the ones that stayed in the Faelands were also killed for being half human. So it was just like kind of a bad time overall. And we learned that there are none in Valaris because it was back when Rhysand's dad was the High Lord, and by the time Rhysand took over all of the like half Fae. But Rhysand promises that they will open Valaris after this war to anyone who needs a safe place. They'll open the city finally. When they finally make it down to the library, which is kind of in the basement of House of Wind, the basement goes like all the way into the mountain. Rhys introduces Feyre to Clotho, the head librarian. She is a priestess who works here. They have about a dozen priestesses that work within the library. The library is in a giant pit that leads to the center of the mountain. I really do picture it is almost like it is kind of a separate building from House of Wind. Maybe you can directly get into the library, but they definitely have their own entrances and exits and kind of their own complex with the library of House of Wind versus the house of House of Wind above it. But it is kind of built into the mountain below the main house. And it's built in a spiral that goes down into the mountain itself, and you can't see the bottom of this spirally. And Rhys Feyre's what's that down at the bottom? And then Rhys tells the story of Cassian attempting to fly down there one time when Rhys dared him to. After he flew down there, he came back up faster than I've ever seen him fly, white as death. He never told me what he saw. The first few weeks I thought it was a joke, just to pique my curiosity. But when I finally decided to see for myself a month later, he threatened to tie me to a chair. He said some things were better left unseen and undisturbed. It's been 200 years and he still won't tell me what he saw. If you even mention it, he goes pale and shaky and won't talk for a few hours. So Rhys is honestly, we don't know what's down there, but we're not bothering it. It's not bothering us, so he was fine. Clotho leads them to a work table that's kind of been set up for their research. Clearly they've pulled books and papers for them to look through, and also they have a little tea service set up with some snacks, which is lovely. As Clotho's pointing things out, Feyre notices that her fingers are pretty mangled. That kind of reminds her a bit of Ianthe. And then after Clotho leaves, Rhysand explains that Clotho was hurt by a group of men and had her tongue cut out so she couldn't tell on them, and her fingers mangled so she couldn't write down their names. But Moore found her and brought her here, and then Moore hunted down the men. All of the priestesses in the library are like her. They're women who have had to endure some sort of violence at the hands of men. And this library is a place for them to heal. Some come for just a short time period to process and heal and then leave, and some remain forever. The library belongs to the priestesses and is open to the public for research only. So it is not a public library, as I just said. And only if the priestesses approve of the people who are wanting to come in and do research. They're really the stewards of this library and really have control over it. Feyre's oh my gosh, thank you so much for sharing this place with me. And Rhysand says, it belongs to you two now. Not just because she's a high lady, but because she is a woman who has endured kind of abuse and violence at the hands of men. They flirt for a bit, and they reminisce on her days back in Reschool when she was just learning how to read. Now she can do high-level academic research. Oh, what a school. He does threaten to do very inappropriate things to her in the library, which is a safe haven for battered women. Of course. But then Rhys decides that it would be inappropriate. And he does winnow away to a different level of the library and work at a different table because Feyre is distracting him. But it's a little confusing because they should not be able to winnow inside the house. And Rhys is I don't know, sometimes the house makes its own rules. I don't know, I think we should maybe have some questions. They work for 2 hours and then they leave. When they reconvene to discuss what they learned a few hours later, it's mostly conflicting info about everything. And Feyre's Feyre's annoyed that they didn't find anything decisive about the wall. And Feyre says, even if everyone allies with us against Hybern, do we stand a chance against them? And Rhysand says, it'll be close. And Feyre says, what if you and the King of Hybern go head to head? And Rhys says, I don't know. He's been smart keeping his powers secret, but he did have to resort to trickery and threats to beat us that day in Hybern. He stands a better chance at sure victory by overwhelming us with numbers and stretching us thin, but regardless, the damage would be catastrophic, even without the cauldron. And then Rhysand talks about how he'd be willing to sacrifice himself to ensure the victory. And Feyre's no, I'm not okay with you sacrificing yourself to ensure our victory. I need you in our future. I demand it. And then Rhysand says, how can you ask me not to give everything I have to ensure that you, my family, and my people survive? And Feyre says, you have given enough, and this is not your burden to bear alone. And so Feyre's okay, so we need a better plan than you just sacrificing yourself, Rhysand. You know how Amren said the monsters were going to come after the Book of Breathing was put back together? Maybe we can recruit some of our favorite spookies and ookies, our favorite monsters. She says, are you thinking of who I'm thinking of? That's right. It's time to go visit our very favorite BFF, the Bone Carver. I wonder what he would give to go back home. That evening, Rhysand goes to find Cassian, and Feyre goes to find Amren and Nesta. They're working in the House of Wind in a workroom, and they're just glaring at each other. And Feyre goes, I'm sorry to interrupt your staring contest. I just wanted to check and see how the first lesson went. And Amren says, fine, we were just waiting for you busybodies to leave us alone. Feyre's is this part of her training, the staring contest situation? And Amren says, Rhysand has his own method of training you. I have mine. We visit the Court of Nightmares tomorrow. She needs some basic training before we do. Amren's school is pretty different than Reschool. It's a pretty different vibe than Reschool, but I personally think it's probably a more rigorous academic experience. I mean, I don't know. They are just staring at each other, but I feel like Amren probably has higher test scores at her school. They're practicing shielding because obviously Nesta's going to need to be able to shield if they're going to the Court of Nightmares. But that does seem fairly obvious. So that does seem like a good place to start Amren. Feyre says to Nesta, like, are you okay? Like, is this going all right? Are you all right? And Amren is like, she's fine. Stubborn as an ass, but as you are related, I'm not surprised. Because they are just two sides of the same coin. What is Feyre and Nesta? Two sides of the same coin. Don't you forget it. Also, like, Feyre is being, like, very judgy in her head about Amren's schooling methods. And I just, like, really don't think you're in any place to judge when, like, your husband's method for teaching you to read was, like, writing the same sentence over and over again. Which taught you actually nothing, except how to waste time. And then Feyre starts asking Amren about the prison, and Nesta goes, what's the prison? And Amren goes, hell entombed in stone, full of creatures you should thank the mother no longer walk the earth freely. And Feyre's like, so like who? Who would you say is like in the prison? If you had to like name some of the worst guys in there, who would you say? And Amren says, I'm giving a magic lesson, not a history one. If you want someone to gossip with, go find one of the dogs. I'm sure Cassian's still sniffing around upstairs. Nesta's giggling at this. She loves that Amren has some teeth. That night, Mor, Cassian, Rhys, and Feyre have dinner at the townhouse, and Feyre is like so sore she can barely move. Mor is still feeling like quite cranky about their trip to the Court of Nightmares, but like they gotta go. That night, Feyre dreams of Under the Mountain. But instead of Claire pinned to the wall, it's Nesta, and Elaine is naked on the spit behind her being cooked, and Amarantha is taking Rhys-Anne back to her bedroom. And Feyre, like, can't move. She's, like, stuck as this nightmare unfolds around her. She can't stop any of it. And Rhys wakes her up, starts having her, like, take some deep breaths as she, like, throws up all over the floor, and he's, like, magicking it away and, like, rubbing her back as she, like, takes a minute to come back to herself. And Feyre thinks to herself as she's like recovering from this nightmare, she promises herself that she would never again let someone hurt him or her sisters like that. The next morning, Rhys-Anne's kind of keeping a close eye on Feyre as they get like ready, and he asks her if she wants to talk about it, and she decides she does. She says, so I told him all of it, stumbling over the parts that had made me ill. He only listened, and when I was done, that shakiness remained, but speaking of it, voicing it out loud to him, that savage grip of those terrors lightened, cleared away like dew in the sun. I freed a long breath, as if blowing those fears from me, letting my body loosen in its wake. And then Rhys-Anne, like, kisses her. Cassian arrives at the house, and then they're all winnowing to the prison, and then Rhys kisses her again once they land. Feyre and Cassian are the ones going down to the prison. Rhys-Anne reminds them to, like, stick together. He's like, buddy system, do not separate. Hold hands if you're in a tricky spot, okay? I want you to stay together, stay close. Rhys-Anne is going to a meeting with Azriel where he's going to talk with him about what they've learned about the Autumn Court. And he's like, so when you guys are all done, just give me a call down the bottom and I'll come pick you up. Feyre talks to Cassian as they like walk towards the prison about the plan to release the Bone Carver to help them in the war. Cassian isn't 100% convinced that the Bone Carver won't just become like another problem they have to deal with. He's like, I don't really see how this will be like helpful and like not just like a bad idea for everyone. I'm just not sure like how we make sure that the Bone Carver doesn't just like become another problem we have to deal with. Feyre's like, well, I mean, like, Rhys-Anne probably thinks it's a good idea, right? Like, he wouldn't have just let us, like, do this plan if he thought it was so risky. And Cassian says, Rhys has been known to hatch plans that make my heart stop dead in my chest. So I wouldn't count on him being the voice of reason in this situation. Cassian brings up this idea that, like, the Bone Carver is an old god from a time before the Cauldron and the High Fae were here. And supposedly, the Bone Carver can fell hundreds of soldiers with one breath. I do like to believe that the Bone Carver has such stinky breath that if he goes, he can kill 100 soldiers dead. I think that's funny. Is that what he's doing? Yeah, it is. This book is fiction and it's my version. This is ACOWAR, Nichelle's version. Feyre is like hopeful that Amren will give them the tools and tricks to get the Bone Carver out. And Cassian is like, be careful when you're talking with Amren about this place. Like, don't push her too hard. She does not like to talk about it. And Amren is a spooky, scary lady, so we don't push her. She doesn't want to be pushed. They descend down through the prison. As usual, the vibes are very spooky, and they arrive at the Bone Carver's cell. And as always, Feyre sees the Bone Carver as a little boy. But this time, Feyre realizes that the little boy isn't just like a random little boy. It has Rhys-Anne's face, but the smile is her father's. She said that the hideous smile is her father's, which is like kind of rude. Like Papa Archer on Catching Strays here. Clearly supposed to be their child. Like it's supposed to be Rhys and Feyre's future child if they survive long enough to have one. And that like kind of rattles her. Cassian's clearly not seeing the same thing. He is like spooked to the max by the bone carver. So he's clearly not seeing like a cute, adorable little like baby Reese. And the bone carver says as they arrive, "Hi lady, congratulations on your union. Did you bring me a present?" And Feyre gives him a shard of bone from the adder from when she smushed him onto the pavement. This was the only thing left of him. And the bone carver is obsessed with that gift. It was a good gift, Feyre. Good work. And the bone carver says, "I spell my sister on you, curse breaker. Did you steal from her? Did she weave a thread of your life into her loom?" And the weaver is his sister. We learn. How fun. I love that. I love that. Oh my gosh, I love it. The bone carver and the weaver are sisters. Well, brother and sister. And the bone carver says, "If I tell you a secret, warrior heart," to Cassian, "what if I tell you what the rock and the darkness and the sea beyond whispered to me, Lord of bloodshed? How they shuddered in fear on that island across the sea. How they trembled when she emerged. She took something precious. She ripped it out with her teeth. What did you wake that day in Hybern, prince of bastards? What came out was not what went in. How lovely she is, new as a fawn, and yet ancient as the sea. How she calls to you, a queen, as my sister once was. Terrible and proud, beautiful as a winter sunrise. Nesta, Nesta. How the wind moans her name. Can you hear it too? Nesta, Nesta, Nesta. What did she do, drowning in the ageless dark? What did she take?" Cassian is like gone completely still as the bone carver like says this little thing about Nesta. He's like not even breathing. And Feyre's like, anyway, back to us. The reason we're here today, sir. Nesta is not even on the topic list of convo. And then bone carver's like, my bad. What did you guys want? And Feyre is like, okay, so we got the Book of Breathings, and it does seem like there could be a spell inside the Book of Breathings that might send you home. Would you be interested in that? And Bone Carver says, I'm listening. And Feyre explains that war is coming, and they potentially would be happy to send him home if he would help them out in the war. And the Bone Carver is like, I actually don't have a home to return to. This cell is where I wish to be. Why do you think I let them trap me here? You have met my sister, my twin, the Weaver, as you now call her. I knew her as Striga. She and my older brother, Kostya. How they delighted in this world when we fell into it. How these ancient fae feared and worshipped them. Had I been braver, I might have bided my time, waited for their power to fade, for that long ago fae warrior to strike Striga into diminishing her power and becoming confined to the middle. Kostya, too, confined and bound by his little lake on the continent. All before Prythian, before the land was carved up, and any high lord was crowned. Clever, that fae warrior. Her bloodline is long gone now, though a trace still runs through some human line. He smiled, perhaps a bit sadly. No one remembers her name, but I do. She would have been my salvation, had I not made my choice long before she walked this earth. She could not kill them in the end. They were too strong. They could only be contained. I knew that long before she ever trapped them. Took it upon myself to find my way here. I don't know what's happening in this passage, but it feels important to me. Hunting for any connection to Thread of Glass. At every moment, I'm saying, excuse me, do you think Aelin might be here? Excuse me, do you see a Galathinius somewhere under the sentences of this book? I don't know if we see Aelin Galathinius under the sentences of this book, but like, maybe. Would love to see her. Sarah could literally put her in any capacity. The next Crescent City book, they could be at the bar. And one of the drinks could be called the Fireheart. And I would be like, I just miss them. I miss her every day. Essentially, the Bone Carver is hiding from his siblings because they are death gods, and they're like a lot stronger than him, so they might murder him. And he doesn't want to leave the prison and remind his siblings that he exists. Like right now, they're like thriving with like separately, you know. Cassian tries to convince him that if Hybern wins, they might just like blow up the prison, and he won't even have the prison to come home to. But the Bone Carver is like, no, they wouldn't. Like even Hybern isn't that stupid. The prison would remain. And Cassian's like, okay, well, if you don't want to help, then we should leave. The lights of the hewn city await. And Bone Carver obviously has commentary on that and wonders what like Kyr's price will be. He starts talking about that. And Cassian says, out with it. And then the Bone Carver says, my sister had a collection of mirrors in her black castle. She admired herself day and night in those mirrors, gloating over her youth and beauty. There was one mirror, the Ouroboros, she called it. It was old even when we were young. A window to the world. All could be seen. All could be trolled through its dark surface. Kyr possesses it. An heirloom of his household. Bring it to me. That is my price. The Ouroboros, and I am yours to wield, if you can find a way to free me. And Feyre says, we'll see. And then Cassian and Feyre make it out of the prison. They kind of are chatting about what they learned from the Bone Carver. Cassian had wanted to come and see the bone carver because they both suspected that he might know something about Nesta, because like calls to like, and Nesta clearly has some sort of like dark power in her. And Feyre says, would you be frightened of her if Nesta was death, or if her power came from it? Cassian was quiet for a long moment. He said at last, I am a warrior. I've walked beside death my entire life. I would be more afraid for her to have that power, but not afraid of her. He considered and added after a heartbeat, nothing about Nesta could frighten me. I swallowed and squeezed his hand. Thank you. Love that. This is what Nesta needs. Nothing about Nesta could frighten me. She can be as like growly and mean and pointy as she wants, but like Cassian is not afraid. Cassian is not afraid of her. Oh, there's a line from Throne of Glass that I'm like thinking of, but I can't remember. But it's like I think it's from maybe even Crown of Midnight, in which there's like this prince and this knight, and the like knight sees all that she is and he is not afraid. And so he's the one that ends up with her. And like Cassian is her knight who sees her and is not afraid. He sees all that she is and he is not afraid. What a gift. What a gift Nesta has. Then Rhys comes to pick them up, and Cassian says to Rhys as he's picking them up and winnowing them home, you're not going to like the bone carver's asking price. And then they winnow away. Okay, we're going to have to stop. We're at like 2 hours. Ooh, my throat is hurting. We still have like 6 chapters left. Ooh, it's a long section. I will be back in 2 seconds for you, but probably tomorrow for me. Okay. Hi, how are you? Welcome back. I mean, you didn't go anywhere. I went somewhere, but now I'm back to finish ACOWAR. We're heading back to the townhouse from, I don't know. Let's see. Oh, the bone carver. Heading back to the townhouse after the bone carver. They know that someone has to stay behind. They're like making plans to go to the human city that night. Someone has to stay behind to defend the city. They always keep someone stationed in the city from the inner court to kind of oversee that, especially since the attack on Hybern, and Cassian winds up being the one that has to do it. Elaine is also obviously staying behind. Neither Feyre or Nesta would be really about bringing Miss Little Elaine to the Court of Nightmares. But before they go to the human city, Feyre goes to check on Elaine first. She's upstairs in the family library. Nesta's in there too, reading on the other side of the room. And Nesta's like in a bad mood, as per usual. She's a little cranky, but she's ready to head out on their mission. And Feyre goes and chats with Elaine, who's just like staring out the window. And Feyre's like, hey, what you looking at? And Elaine is like, I can see so very far now, all the way to the sea. Feyre's like, yeah, it takes some getting used to, because like now that Elaine is Fae, she has all these Fae senses, which are substantially stronger than human senses. And she talks about how she can like hear everything too. And Feyre's like, it takes some getting used to, and you can learn to drown out the sound if it bothers you. And Elaine says, I can hear the sea, even at night, even in my dreams, the crashing sea and the screams of a bird made of fire. Feyre's like, oh, that's cool. She's like, anyway, I have a garden at my other house, like at the townhouse. I would love for you to come tend it if you're willing. There's no garden at House of Wind, but like, would love to have you get your hands in some dirt if you want to do that. Elaine asks, will I hear the earthworms writhing through the soil or the stretching of roots? Will the birds of fire come to sit on the trees and watch me? Nesta's watching from the other side of the room, and Feyre can just like see the pain on Nesta's face. Like clearly like Elaine is not doing well. Like not doing well in any capacity. This does not make any sense. It really seems like Elaine has maybe like lost it a little bit, like lost the plot. She goes over to Nesta and she's like, Nesta, there is a book I need you to help me find. And they kind of go to like the far side of the library, like to a little alcove, I think, where they're kind of like tucked away. I'm like, I feel like if Elaine can hear the sea from this distance, like she could probably hear you guys whispering in the corner, but like whatever. They then chat as if Elaine can't hear them. And on the way to this little alcove, as she's like walking over to Nesta, Feyre does check to make sure the windows do not open in this room, because she's a little bit worried that her sweet sister is going to jump out them. She's like, my sister is not well. Things are not going well in the house of Elaine. Nesta said that she found Elaine down in the library this morning when she wasn't in her rooms. She had this moment where Nesta woke up, looked for Elaine everywhere, found her down here. She hasn't been eating. She refuses to eat, and she's been speaking in these like riddles, talking about like birds of fire. And Nesta's like, I don't know what's going on. I haven't been with her as much because I've been training with Amryn, so I don't know if something happened to her. Like, I don't know. And Feyre's like, probably nothing happened. It's just like part of the recovery process, probably. She's just like kind of like processing things, you know? And Nesta's like, do you think she has powers like I do? And Feyre's like, what the heck are you even talking about, Nesta? I haven't even seen any of your powers. You've been super sneakies about your powers. It mostly just looks like you and Amren sit around and stare at each other. So I'm not sure if Elaine has powers like you, because I don't know what your powers are. Feyre's like, I don't know. I don't think so. Like, Elaine hasn't shown any evidence of having, like, powers of her own. Feyre's like, maybe we should just, like, ignore the problem for a couple days and see if it just gets better on its own. Like, we'll keep an eye on her, but, like, we'll just kind of see if she just, like, sorts herself out. We've got to leave anyway. I'm sure she'll be fine for, like, tonight. And then Feyre is like, I think it might be helpful for you to train with Cassie and Nesta. And Nesta is like, why can't I train with the other one, meaning Asriel, or the sassy blonde lady? And why must I train at all? I don't want to be a warrior. I have, like, no desire to do that. And Feyre is like, it could just, like, make you stronger. And Nesta's like, there are many types of strength beyond the ability to wield a blade and end lives. Amren told me that yesterday. And Feyre's like, okay, well, you were the one who said you wanted our enemies dead. Like, why not kill them yourself? I'm just, like, giving you the opportunity to murder people. I thought you might have fun with that. thought you might like that. And Nesta is like, why bother when someone else can do it for me? But before they can, like, fully finish their argument about whether Nesta should train, what they should about Elaine, you know, the huge, Lucien strolls in the room. And I don't think Lucien sees them initially. Maybe he does. I don't know what Lucien's up to. Lucien, like, sits down next to Elaine and is like, hey, can I get anything for you? And then Feyre, like, pops right into his head. She's worried that he's going to overstep with Elaine. So she's like sitting in his mind, wants to kind of suss out the vibe, see what his intentions are. But she doesn't want to do anything that would compromise Elaine, because Elaine is looking just, like, so intensely frail. Lucien's brain, he's thinking the same thing. He's thinking about how frail Elaine looks and how much he hadn't expected this to be his mate. Like, she is so dissimilar from Jasminda, his, like, first big love. Jasminda had been, like, bold and, like, brash and, like, loud, and Elaine is just, like, so quiet and frail, and it's just, like, not what he would have anticipated for his mate. Like, if he would have selected a mate for himself, he probably wouldn't have selected Elaine. But he sits down in the chair across from Elaine, and he makes himself a cup of tea out of the, like, tea service that Elaine has sitting in front of her that she's ignoring, and he tries to, like, really play it cool. Like, this is something that might happen every other day. He offers Elaine a little cookie, and she looks over at him, and it's the first time that he's, like, really, like, fully seen her face, like, had her look at him since Hybern. And Lucien thinks to himself that she is the most beautiful female he had ever seen. He thinks in his head, mine, you are mine, and I am yours, a mate. And Elaine says to Lucien, who are you? And Lucien, like, introduces himself. Then Elaine says, Lucien, from my sister's stories, her friend. And Lucien's like, yes, you know me, yeah, I'm Feyre's friend. And Elaine says, you were in Hybern. You betrayed us. And Lucien's like, yeah, kind of an accident. I kind of didn't know we were betraying you at the time. Like, and I didn't know you were, like, a lot was happening. And Elaine's like, I was to be married in a few days. And Lucien starts to get angry. Feyre could sense this, like, anger rising up in him because Elaine's talking about, like, her fiance. And he's like, you're my mate. He gets a little possessive in his head. He keeps it chill externally, though. He says, I know, I'm sorry. And Elaine goes, I can hear your heart. When I sleep, I can hear your heart beating through the stone. Can you hear mine? And Lucien's like, nope, that's just you. Just you hearing heartbeats. And Elaine is like, no one ever does. No one's ever looked. Not really. He did. He saw me. He will not now. I don't know. He saw me. This is so devastating. Lucien, get out of there. Let her grieve. She does not need another boy after her. Nesta's been watching Feyre, and Nesta realizes that Feyre has got into Lucien's mind, and she's like, have you ever done that to me? And Feyre's like, no, wouldn't ever do that to you. And then they kind of return over to the sitting area, and Nesta immediately goes over to Lucien and is like, get out of my library. I'll slit your throat while you're sleeping. She doesn't say that the second part, but it is implied. And Lucien's like, I just came for a book. Okay, you're sitting next to Elaine drinking tea and eating a cookie. You didn't come for a book. No one's that stupid, Lucien. And Nesta says, okay, well, go get a book and leave. Like, the bookshelves are over there. And Lucien's like, she needs fresh air. And Nesta says, we will judge what she needs. And Lucien is like, take her to the sea, take her to some garden, but get her out of this house for an hour or two. And Lucien walks away, and Feyre's like, I think you guys need to move in the townhouse right now. Like, actually, I don't feel comfortable with Elaine being up here by herself, isolated. Like, I would rather her be a little bit closer in the townhouse. It's just, like, a smaller space. There's, like, less happening. And also, it's more in the, like, the center of the city. She'll be able to, like, be in the garden, and, like, it'll be easy for her to get out and, like, take walks. Like, it will just be better. Feyre's like, we're moving you guys, like, right now. She lets Rhys know. Rhys obviously agrees immediately and sets up 2 bedrooms for her sister. Also one for Lucien. Why is Lucian coming? Lucian can stay up in the House of Wind. Lucian can stay. Rhysand is like very much Team Lucian. Like to the extreme. Like he might have the t-shirt. Like Rhys, he's like, get this boy his mate. And so I think he's facilitating this because I feel there's no reason for Lucian to move also into the townhouse. Lucian can stay up in the House of Wind by himself, but he gets moved too. Azriel is the one who carries Elaine, like flies Elaine down from the House of Wind. Rhysand carries Nesta because she's unwilling to fly with Cassian. The Nesta-Rhysand relationship is dear to me. It is dear to me. They hate each other's guts, and I hope they do forever. That relationship holds a place in my heart. I appreciate it. We'll talk about it a little more in a second, but the Nesta-Rhysand relationship is special to me. I know I talk a lot about how I hate Nesta haters, and Rhysand, I would say, is a Nesta hater. How do I reconcile those things? Honestly, quite easily. Azriel's carrying Elaine, and it's like so evident that Azriel is like so good with Elaine. Like he is so good at being like soft and sweet and gentle and like kind of matches her vibe. Immediately, they land in the house, and immediately Azriel takes her out to show her the garden. He's like, I can show you the garden. And Elaine, feeling the good vibes of Azriel, like agrees and nods. Okay, like I'm not someone who's like a big Azriel fan. I honestly in general don't have huge feelings about who Elaine ends up with, but this moment is really sweet. Like Azriel is like really sweet with her. And Lucian is my nemesis. So you might think I have stronger feelings towards Azriel, but like we will later be introduced to a secondary relationship potential for Azriel at some point in the series, and I do really like her. So I'm really torn. Azriel takes her out into the garden, and he offers her his arm like a real gentleman, and she takes it, and he whispers, beautiful. Like he's just like a tender little nug. Nesta arrives like a moment later, looking quite nauseous and demanding a bathroom, and Feyre mentally to Rhysand says, what did you do? And Rhysand replies, she complained that I was flying deliberately slow, so I went fast. And Lucian has arrived too, and Lucian's like pissed off that Azriel has Elaine alone in the garden because he's the worst. And Nesta's vomiting in the bathroom, and Cassian's like, what did you do to Rhys? She'll never fly again. Cassian is devastated because like obviously like Cassian is here for the long game, okay? And he wants his girl. She's not his girl yet, but she will be his girl. She wants her to be able to go flying with him. He loves flying. Rhys, don't ruin this for him. Nesta comes out of the bathroom and her eyes are burning with what some might say are silver flames, and she looks ready to fight Rhysand, and Cassian steps in front of her and tells her, do you know that the last time I got into a brawl in this house, I was kicked out for a month? It was Amren's fault, of course, but no one believed me, and no one dared banish her. He's like clearly trying to diffuse things and like get between her and Rhys so she doesn't like get herself in trouble, because she will overstep that boundary, because at the end of the day, Rhysand is in charge of her, which I'm sure is like painful for Nesta. I'm sure that is incredibly painful, but like it's the facts of things, my love. And so the tensions are at all times quite high. And then Lucian asks Nesta, what are you? Because she's got scary, spooky silver eyes. And Nesta says, I made it give me something back, meaning the cauldron. And then she says, I wish to go to my rooms. And Feyre kind of like shows her up the stairs where her and Elaine's rooms will be, and tells her that they're planning to leave for the Hewn City in just like a couple hours. They spend a little bit of time talking about Nesta and what is happening with her. The flames that Nesta is able to like produce and clearly were visible in her are not the flames of Autumn Court, but like cold flames. Feyre's hypothesis is that they are the flames of death itself. And Rhysand says, only Nesta would not only conquer death, but pillage it. And Feyre thinks, no wonder she didn't wish to speak to anyone about it, didn't wish to bear witness on our behalves. It had been mere seconds for us while she'd gone under. I had never asked either of my sisters how long it had been for them inside that cauldron. This is an important moment for Feyre to like recognize that their trauma might look different. Also, that the way they process that trauma might look different than the way Feyre processed her trauma. Because, of course, Feyre dealt with some, like, dramatic stuff under the mountain. But I think the way in which she processed it is, like, very different from the way that, like, both Nesta and Elaine are processing it. They're all processing this, like, their traumas of their past in, like, quite different ways. And I think Feyre is recognizing that she does not understand the extent of their trauma because she was not, like, really there even though she was like physically in the room, she was not under the water with them. A couple hours later, Feyre and the crew are getting ready to leave for the Hewn City. Lucian is staying behind, and he is going to look through some books, do some research about the wall while he's at the house. Elaine and Asriel are still in the garden. Elaine is drinking some tea, and Asriel is just like reading reports and like keeping an eye on them. And Feyre and Rhys are upstairs in their bedroom, and they're like kind of watching them out the window. And Feyre says to her husband, "Why not make them mates? Why Lucian? Who decides?" And Rhys says, "Fate, the mother, the cauldrons, swirling eddies." And Feyre mentions that both Tamlin and Rhys parents were both mates, but they were like pretty ill matched. Like both of them had quite unhappy marriages. And Rhys explains, "A mating bond can be rejected. There is a choice in the matter, but there's always a pull. For the girls, it is easier to ignore, but sometimes the boys get like really nasty and mean, and they do murder like the object of the women's affections. Like things can really get dicey if the mating bond is rejected. It's not like a simple process." And I do think in this moment we're getting a little bit of a glimpse into what I hope we really deeply explore in Elaine's book, the ACOTAR 6. I do think mating bonds might be deeply unethical. I love a mating bond. It's one of my favorite like romantasy tropes, but I think here we're getting really some insight into the fact that like, oh, this is maybe not great for the people involved, in that it like strips them of like choice when it comes to their life partners. Even Feyre herself, who is mating, like, you know, happily mated to her husband, is like really not loving the vibes of the mating bond here. Feyre continues, "Do you think Elaine and Lucian are a good match?" And Rhys says, "Well, Lucian is very loyal." Feyre says, "So is Asriel." And Rhys says, "Az has been preoccupied with the same female for 500 years. More. Asriel has like a little bit of a crush on Mor, but like Mor is like clearly very uninterested in Asriel, so like why do we care that Asriel has a crush on Mor? He'll get over it. It'll pass," in the words of Hot Priest from Fleabag. And Rhys wants Feyre to stay out of it and to like just like let them figure it out amongst themselves. And I don't really think that's ethical at this moment, because Elaine is like clearly not doing well. So to just allow her to like figure it out seems kind of cruel. And then they spend a little bit of time talking about the ethics of going into mines and how they had gone into Lucian's mine earlier. And she's like talking to Rhys and kind of trying to talk through whether that reason was good enough. And Rhys is like, I don't like, it's always hard to tell. There's no like clear line, but like I would have done the same thing to make sure family is safe. And like you just always kind of have to weigh those. And I think it should always feel a little icky. Like it should always feel like you've overstepped a boundary. You just have to decide if that is a boundary that you are willing to overstep for what is happening. Like it should always feel like a pretty substantial cost, essentially. And then they get dressed for night court in matching black feather crowns. And Rhysand says to his wife, "Are you ready to be wicked?" And Feyre says, "This time I get to make Kier beg," because last time she went, she was like going as like Rhysand's pet, but now she's going as High Lady of the Night Court, and that will be respected. They've all got their little fits on. Amryn had gotten Nesta ready. She's not dressed like in a little scanty dress like Mor and Feyre, who are described as being dressed in cobwebs and stardust. And she's not dressed like Amryn. Amryn normally wears like, I picture what Jasmine wears in Aladdin, just in like different colors. I think that's Amryn's normally fit. She's wearing this like, it is like tight black dress, like tight up top. Her like the top of it is tight, all the sleeves are long, and then like a flowy skirt. I think it's actually the dress I like cobbled together, the Nesta that you're seeing here, but I think it's like a similar vibe to the Nesta we are seeing on our screens. Sort of, probably prettier. Nesta does not balk at all at the crowds of the Hewn City. She walks through with her head held high. Did you think Nesta was going to crumble in front of them? No. There's one throne at the top of the dais. The rest of the crew stands around the base of the dais, kind of at their spot, and Mor had warned them as they like left to like promise no one anything, like make no promises. Rhysand helps Feyre up the steps and leads her to the throne. She sits in the throne and he perches himself on the arm of the throne, like clearly making a statement that like, this girl is not an accessory anymore. Like she's your High Lady. Rhysand says, "Bow." And no one had. As Feyre went up to the throne, rude. Everyone drops to their knees, including Nesta. Feyre like does not look at Nesta because she's like, the vibes here are weird. And the vibes are weird, okay? If your little baby sister is now the boss of you, the queen, the vibes are going to be weird. But in this situation, Nesta bows. I think Nesta like understands the importance of like the Hewn City. If they were just at their house and Feyre had her bow, I think Nesta would not be on board. But, like, she understands that it is a necessary evil in this place, but I'm sure she doesn't love it. I'm sure this is not her favorite activity she's have to do, is bow before her sister and her husband. And Rhysand says, I will interpret the lack of 2 thrones to be due to the fact that the visit came upon you quickly, and I will let all of you escape without having your skin flayed from your bones as my mating gift to you, our loyal subjects. Feyre, once again, is, like, tapping into her drama training. She has to, like, put on the mask of, like, the Court of Nightmares. They have to play a different role. Feyre says, surely, my love, they would love to stand now. And Rhys says, rise. Some people are, like, trying to test Feyre's magic. She can feel these, like, magic hands kind of, like, probing at her and reaching for her. And Feyre grabs these, like, tendrils of magic with mental talons. And she says to the crowd, do you wish to have these back? And Rhysand says, don't you know that it's not polite to touch a lady without her permission? And she, like, releases them and then, like, notes who they belonged to. Rhysand dismisses, like, their crew to go meet with everyone. Amren and Nesta stay together. They're going to go look for some stuff to test Nesta on. She's doing some, like, training exercises. Feyre's worried that someone might have tried Nesta's shield in particular because she's new to the court, but it didn't seem so. Nesta's face seems, like, just as stoic as always. And Rhys tells Keir that they're to meet in the council room in 10 minutes. They end up in the council room. It is Asriel, Mor, Feyre, Rhysand, and Keir to start with, and there is an empty chair waiting. Who does it belong to? We'll find out in just a moment. And Kira's like, I know why you're here. I know you're here to request my Darkbringer legions to assist you with Hybern. But, like, honestly, I think Hybern has a point. Like, I'm kind of sort of team Hybern in this situation. Kira's like, I kind of understand where they're coming from. Like, we both have been kind of, like, trapped. And we both are living, like, such stagnant lives, me and the Court of Nightmares and Hybern. And Mor's like, last time I checked, you've been free to do as you wish for centuries, longer even. And Keir says, but we are not free here. Not the entirety of this mountain belongs to us, not with your palace atop it. And Rhys is like, all of this belongs to me, actually. This whole mountain does actually belong to me. You're, like, so lucky that I let you use that. Like, honestly, it's so nice of me to let you be evil in my mountain. But if you want the palace upstairs, in exchange for us taking the Darkbringer Legion, like, you can have it. I didn't even know you wanted it. You've never even asked before. And there's a back and forth between Rhys and Keir and Asriel where they're, like, kind of negotiating, kind of, like, taunting each other. And then Keir says, what would you give me for a shot at this war, Rhysand? You hoard yourself to Amarantha, but what about your mate? And Rhysand, obviously he's not going to give Feyre up. Rhysand says, the bargain our ancestors struck grants you the right to choose how and when your army assists my own, but it does not grant you the right to keep your life, Keir, when I grow tired of your existence. And then he, like, uses his mental claws to, like, scratch across the whole table, like, mental talons down the whole table. It's, like, very dramatic for what reason. And I do feel as though if Nesta were in this room, she would not be able to keep a straight face at this. I feel like this show of dramatics from the boys would make her go, she'd make a face with Amren. Her and Amren would be like, what the fuck? Why do we let the boys do anything? Also, it's crazy that Amren isn't in here. I thought Amren was, like, second in command. I know she's, like, training Nesta right now, but, like, I guess Mor is, like, in charge of diplomatic relations with the Court of Nightmares, so maybe they don't need Nesta, or they don't need Amren in this situation. And then Rhys brings Eris into the room. Asriel looks unsurprised, like, clearly Asriel wasn't on this, but Mor goes white at the sight of Eris. The final seat at the table is for Eris, and Mor is just, like, so immediately incredibly hurt by this choice. Eris has healed since that day on the ice, and he sits down at the open seat. Feyre sends a message down the bond being like, what the hell are you doing, Rhysand? Like, what is going on here? And Rhys says back to her mentally, making sure that Keir agrees to help. And Rhysand explains that Eris will make an informal alliance between Autumn Court and Night Court if Keir agrees to help in the war. Feyre's like, how did you get him to agree to that? And Rhysand just ignores her. Call the police on this man. Keir's like, no, that's not enough. And Eris is like, I had forgotten why I felt so relieved when our bargain fell through the last time. The last bargain they had, I'm pretty sure the one he's implying is Mor. Their bargain that fell through was his marriage to Mor. And Rhysand says, okay, then what do you want, Keir? And Keir says, I want out. I want space. I want my people to be free of this mountain. And Feyre is like, you have every comfort, and yet it is not enough for you? And Keir brings up the idea of Valaris, and he's like, we now know about Valaris. Everyone knows. It's not a secret anymore. I was kind of wondering where you guys were all the time. Like, you're never here, and so I was kind of like, I wonder where they go. But, like, now I know. He's like, Kier says, I want access to the city for me and my courts. And Moore goes, no, not that. And Rhysand doesn't immediately disagree, and Feyre's mentally like, you can't be serious. Like, you cannot give him access to Valaris. He's evil here, so we can have one nice city. That's our politics, our plan. We can't have one nice city if you let the evil guy in. Then we'll have no nice cities. And Rhysand says back mentally to Feyre, I've taken precautions. And Rhysand says there would be conditions. Asriel tries to like quiet Moore, who's like clearly getting quite upset by like touching her hand, and she like snatches her hand away from him. Kier wants total access, but Rhys insists that it would definitely need to be limited. And Moore is like just like completely devastated at the thought of her father, who is also like her greatest enemy, coming to her city, this place that has become this like place of healing, this place where she feels so incredibly safe. To allow him access to this place just feels like the biggest betrayal that could happen to her. And Kier looks over at Moore and sees that playing out on her face, and he just smiles, because it's clear that he like doesn't actually care about Valaris. If you're an evil guy, you don't want to hang out in the nice city. You want to hang out in your evil city. But he just like wants to take this from Moore. And Kier says done. He agrees to Rhysand's terms and conditions. And Feyre says, one more thing. I need the Ouroboros mirror immediately. And both Moore and Kier look like quite surprised by this request. And Kier is like, do you even know what the Ouroboros is? And Rhysand says, hey, don't talk to my wife like she's dumb. Do you know what the Ouroboros mirror is, though? And Kier's like, if you can take it, you can have it. Consider it your mating present. And he explains that the Ouroboros mirror, in order to take the Ouroboros mirror, you have to look into it first. And everyone who's ever looked into it has gone mad. So, like, knock yourself out. Then he leaves. Eris is still in the room, obviously. He's just sipping on his wine. And then he says to Moore, you look well. Shut up, Eris. I'll beat you up. And Asriel says, you don't speak to her. Yeah, Asriel and I are going to beat you up. I know he invited you here, but we're going to beat you up. Az will probably do most of the work, but I'll be his hype guy in the back. And Feyre says, how did this come about? And Eris explains that he knew Asriel would come by to see if he had told his dad about Feyre's powers, especially after his brothers mysteriously forgot about them. And Feyre realizes that Rhysand had gone to the Autumn Court and erased Lucian's brother's memories to keep her safe and to make sure that their alliance wouldn't be compromised. And Eris explains that he wouldn't waste that info on his father because he knows that they wouldn't do well partnered with Hybern. And Moore says, so what was your asking price? Eris, another little bride for you to torture? And Eris says, I don't know who gave you that idea, Morgan. Like, I just abandoned you on the border. I didn't torture you. Your family was the one that tortured you. And Moore says, you never gave any evidence to the contrary. Certainly not when you left me in those woods. And Eris says, there were forces at work that you could have never considered. And I am not going to waste my breath explaining them to you. Believe what you want about me. And Feyre says, okay, well, you did, 2 weeks ago, not even, hunt me down like an animal in the forest. So, forgive me if I choose to believe the worst. And Eris says, I was given an order and sent to do it with 2 of my brothers. Or how do you think Lucian got out of Autumn Court in the first place? I kind of helped him. I, let him run away. And clearly, Eris is trying to, spin some story about how he's actually the one trapped in the Autumn Court. But, I don't know, maybe run away. You're, actively in the Night Court right now. Maybe stay here. You got away. They'll give you asylum. You can hang out. Rhysand, I'm sure, would give you a nice little house. You could hang out with Lucian. I don't know. He's just been complicit for centuries, and I think there's only so much you can forgive in this situation, in which clearly you have some access to power. You have some freedom. You have some ability to move about. You're 500 years old. At this point, figure it out. But I feel like he could be doing more. Feyre's anyway, what was your asking price? And Asriel explains, Moore sitting next to him, pissed the heck off. When the time comes, we are to support Eris's bid to take the throne. And Eris is honestly, I would love if you just murdered Baron ASAP, and then I could just pledge the troops immediately. But Rhys says it'll be too messy if he just murders my dad. But eventually, when my dad dies, I want to be the High Lord. And then Eris says to Moore, I'm surprised you still can't control yourself around him. You have every emotion written right on your pretty face. And Asriel is shut up! I told you not to talk to her. Leave her alone. And Eris is I wouldn't have touched you, but when you slept with that other bastard, I knew why you did it. Again, that secret smile had more shrinking. So I gave you your freedom, ending the betrothal in no uncertain terms. And what happened next? Asriel growled. A shadow crossed over Eris's face. There are a few things I regret. That is one of them. But perhaps one day, now that we are allies, I should tell you why, what it cost me. And Moore says, I don't give a shit. Me neither, Moore. I'm not Moore's biggest fan. I have pretty neutral about Moore. Nora is kind of mean to Nesta in a way that I don't love. So some points against her, but like in general, I'm pretty neutral. But like in this situation, gotta be Team Moore. Amren and Nesta are waiting for them outside of the throne room, looking cranky when they get out of the meeting. Favor's thinking about the mirror and how she can't like risk looking into it and going mad. We can't have two Archeron sisters going crazy, and so that plan won't work, so they're gonna have to figure something else out, so they just like winnow home. Cassian and Lucien are both downstairs reading when they arrive home, and Moore and Rhys immediately start to fight. Immediately Moore turns to Rhys and she goes, "Why?" And he doesn't answer, and she starts like punching him in the chest. She's like crying immediately, and Rhys says, "Eris found Azriel, our hands were tied, I made the best of it. I'm sorry." And then Rhys like mentally tells everyone else in the room what happened there, so they're like filled in and they realize why Moore is punching him, you know, the vibes. And then Moore turns to Azriel, "Why didn't you say anything to me?" And Azriel says, "You would have tried to stop it, and we can't afford to lose Kyr's alliance." Cassian's like a little bit pissed about this as well, and he moves to Moore's side and says to Rhysand, "You should have spiked Eris's heads to the front gates." And Lucien says, "I have to agree with Cassian. Eris is a snake." Amren seems to be like okay with the alliance because politically it makes a lot of sense. And Moore says, "It's not about Eris, it's about here. This is my home and you are going to let Kyr destroy it." And Rhysand explains all the precautions he's taken to like make sure that Valaris will be safe, including making sure that like no one will welcome them, like no restaurants will serve anyone from the Court of Nightmares. They won't be allowed to sleep anywhere, like none of the, I guess there are no hotels in Valaris, the closed city, but like no shops will serve them. Like it's going to be a very hostile place. People won't want to come here. Okay, so his solution to this is like a little bit of like weird nationalism, racism. I don't know if I love your solution, Rhysand. We can workshop it though. We'll workshop it. We'll get there. Moore's still like, no. Kyr will be here and he will destroy it. Like if he's allowed in here for a moment, he will destroy it. And Cassian is like, "You should have warned us." And Rhys says, "Yeah, I should have. Like I maybe messed up. I probably should have given Moore a little bit of a warning. And maybe my wife, because he definitely didn't tell Feyre either." And Feyre's like trying to smooth things over between them because she can tell that things are getting to a place that is not that where Rhysand and Moore are going to say things that they don't mean to each other because they're both like quite worked up. And Moore says, if she were alive and I offered to work with her, even if it were to save us all, how would you feel?" And Rhysand says, "If Amarantha offered us a slim shot at survival, I would not give a shit that she made me for all of those years. If Amarantha showed up at that door right now and said that she could buy us a chance of defeating Hybern, at keeping all of you alive, I would thank the cauldron." And Moore says, "You don't mean that." And Rhysand says, "I do." And Feyre tries to like reach out to Rhysand because he's saying like wild things, like he needs to calm the heck down, but all she like reaches towards him in the bond, and all she can feel is this like raging black hole inside of him because this is like really tapped into. They're both like reacting from a place of like pure trauma. Both of them are responding to this situation not with any logic. Their brains are off, and she knows things need to de-escalate before any of them say something that they will like not be able to come back from. Luckily Amren also recognizes this, and she steps in between Moore and Rhysand and says, "Look, Moore, working with Kyr and Eris is not forgiving them. When this war is over, we can go kill them together if you want, okay? We can go get them. We'll have a little girls' day and we'll go kill them. But for war, we need their help." And Moore says to Amren, "My father will poison this city." And Amren says, "I will not allow that." Rhys is just like looking so sad because like Rhysand's like deepest fear is that his friends, the people who really know him, will see him as evil. He like plays evil so much that he's like worried that he will become evil. Feyre sends down the bond to him because she can see this like internal story that he's building for himself. She says, "I see you, and it does not frighten me. Like, you are not the villain. Maybe you made a little bit of a mistake here. You should have maybe told more about this before you got too deep, but like, you are not the villain. You are not evil." And Amren says to Rhys, "You've always been a sneaky bastard, but you should have warned her. You made the right call, played it well, but played it badly." And Rhysand says, "I'm sorry." The sneaky bastard's always causing problems. Feyre gives a little update about the mirror and explains what Kyr told her about it, and also the fact that she wants this mirror because she wants to trade with the bone carver. And Amren doesn't love that plan of releasing the bone carver. She doesn't think that's smart, nor is she eager to share how she escaped the prison. Amren is actually getting like pretty worked up and cranky about this, to the point where Cassian moves himself in the room next to Nesta to grab her if Amren starts to get too scary, which I love. I love Cassian and Nesta. Rhysand explains that the bone carver wants the Ouroboros mirror in exchange for helping them in the war, but they need to have Amren explain how to let him out. Except I don't think Amren wants, or I don't think he wants to leave. Didn't he say that? He's like, "I don't really want to leave." I thought he just wanted the mirror to decorate himself. I don't think we need Amren at all. But Reese says, when we are done with all this, use the book. You can use the book to send yourself home if you want. And Amren says, call off your dog. Azriel is literally behind her with his knife out because she was getting too spooky. She's getting too spooky scary, and Azriel was ready to stab her if he needed to. And Reese is like, why won't you tell us how to get out of the prison? Cassian, at this point, takes Nesta and moves her behind him. And then she's just like, she doesn't say anything. She allows this. And she's just peering over his shoulder. And Amren says, because the stone beneath this house has ears, that the wind has ears, all of it listens. And if it reports back, they will remember that they have not caught me, and I will not let them put me back in that pit. Puts a shield up around them that like no sound can get out, and like promises that no one outside of this room will hear them. And Amren explains that she had to give something up, put herself in a mortal body, like mortal as in Fae, in order to get out. She says, I was perfect, according to some. I did not regret, did not mourn, and pain. I did not experience it. And yet I wound up here, because I was not quite like the others. Even as what I was different, too curious, too questioning. The day the rip appeared in the sky, it was curiosity that drove me. My brothers and sisters fled. Upon the orders of our ruler, we had just laid waste to twin cities, smote them wholly into rubble on the plain, and yet they fled from that rip in the world. But I wanted to look. I was not built or bred to feel such selfish things as want. I'd seen what happened to those of my kind who strayed, who learned to place their needs first, who developed feeling. But I went through the tear in the sky, and here I am. She was put in the prison, and in order to get out of the prison, she had to give all of that up, all of that, like this ability to be kind of like above morality, because she needed to shove herself in a body. And when she like got herself in a mortal body, her cell door just opened and she walked out. And Amren says, that will be the cost for the Carver. You will have to bind him into a body, and I doubt that he will agree. You should have asked me before you went. I would have spared you the visit. And Reese asks if Amren can be unbound, if she can be taken out of this body. And apparently she's like, yeah, but that would be such a bad idea. If she were unbound, she wouldn't remember her connection to anyone, to Rhysand, to anyone in this room, and she would smite them. She's like, I might ignore you, but probably I would just kill you. And Nesta says, what were you? And Amren says, a messenger and a soldier assassin from a wrathful god who ruled a young world. She's like, Amren wasn't my name back then. And she says it's like a long story why she picked the name Amren. And then Elaine wanders into the room, and she's like so surprised to see them because remember, Feyre just put that shield up so no one could hear a sound. And so Elaine thought she was alone in the house, and she's like a little disoriented, and she explains that she didn't hear them, but she did hear something. And Azriel's, okay, like, what did you hear? And Elaine says, I think I was dreaming. I'm always dreaming these days. I can hear her crying. Everyone thinks she's dead, but she's not. Only different. Changed. As I was. I saw young hands wither with age. I saw a box of black stone. I saw a feather of fire land on snow and melted. I was angry. I was so angry that something was taken. So it took something from them as punishment. And Nesta and Feyre are just like watching their sister, like a little concerned that like she's completely lost it. She's like what the heck is she saying? And Feyre asks Azriel, like, do you know what that means? And Azriel just like winnows away. Helpful, thank you. After everyone leaves, Feyre finds Nesta and asks her what happened with her and Amren in the Hewn City. And Nesta explains that Amren brought her to a room full of treasures, and some of the treasures wanted to hurt them. And Amren had her test herself on the magic designed to repel intruders, because it should be kind of a similar sort of magic that the wall is made out of. She was just supposed to search it for weaknesses in its defenses, but Nesta failed every time. Nesta was unable to find them at all. Great. She's kind of cranky about this, obviously. So Feyre quickly switches the topic to Elaine. They clearly need to do something because she is not doing well. And Nesta says everything has a cost. Maybe the cost of her youth and immortality was losing part of her sanity. And Feyre says, what was your cost? And Nesta says, perhaps it was to see Elaine suffer. Well, I got away unscathed. Ow, that hurts my feelings. Nesta haters, look at that. You hate her? She just loves her sisters. Her love just doesn't look like yours. It looks like Reese's. Leave her alone. Nesta leaves, and then Lucien comes down the stairs. And Lucien is like, maybe we should have a healer come and look over Elaine. Like, clearly she's a little not well. Feyre agrees, exhausted. She's like, not today, though, because, like, I'm tired. I did a lot today. It's a busy day. Maybe tomorrow. And Lucien's like, okay, let me know if you need me for anything. And Feyre knows that Nesta must have eavesdropped on that whole conversation. Obviously. Duh. I don't have magical Fae hearing, and I probably would have eavesdropped on that conversation. Feyre then sends a request to Magda, who is like their like favorite healer, and then goes to her room and just bawls. Rhysand comes up and he's rubbing her back and he offers her something to eat. Both of them are feeling just like so worn down by the day and these little losses that they suffered and these like these things they had to compromise in order to get what they wanted. And Rhysand says to her, I should have found another way. If she, Amarantha, showed up at this house, I would kill her without even letting her speak. I would kill her. And Feyre says, I know. And Rhys says, you asked me at the library why I'd rather take all of this upon myself. Tonight is why. Seeing more cry is why. I made a bad call. I tried to find some other way around this poop hole that we're in. And Feyre's like, should I look into the Ouroboros mirror? Like, would you risk that yet? And Rhys says, not yet. The next day, Feyre winnows herself over to the House of Wind for training, and she tries to use her wings to land because the wards extend like a little bit above the House of Wind, so you really do have to have wings to get there. I like truly don't know how everyone else gets there. Seems really tricky. Whatever. She totally biffs the landing and falls over, and Cassian gives her some advice for next time. He's been helpful. Cassian can definitely sense that Feyre's having kind of like a rough day, rough morning, and asks what kind of training she wants. He's like, do you want me to go easy or like extra hard? And Feyre requests like a hard training session. She wants something that'll like get her mind off of everything. And Cassian's like, I get it. The training really helps me like focus and like center myself. And then it's time for Asriel's flying lesson afterwards. And Feyre chats with him about like kind of what happened yesterday and if he's had a chance to talk with Mor. And he hasn't yet. It's clearly like a touchy subject. He does not like the tension that's sitting between them. She's limping by the time both lessons are done. Both of them went quite hard. Mor is waiting for her back at the townhouse, and she's eating a pastry, which Feyre snatches and eats the rest of. That's crazy. There's absolutely no one in my life that if they were eating a pastry, I would just take it from in front of them and finish it. I think that's actually kind of mean behavior. Mor had brought a pile of stationery with her with the High Lord's responses. We've gotten 2.5 responses. Helion, the day court, is a yes. Thessian from Dawn Court also said yes, but only if it's at a neutral location. And then Callus, who is the High Lord of Winter Court, doesn't really trust them after Out of the Mountain. No one else has sent a reply. And Mor explains that if they don't reply, they can either drag these High Lords to the meeting, they can like force them to come, or they can just like have the meeting without them. And Mor is like, we'll probably go with the second option because like honestly, like if we have to drag you to this meeting, what are the chances you're going to actually want to ally with us in this larger war? Feyre and Mor kind of talk about what happened with Eris in the Hewn City the day before, and Mor is like, I do understand what Eris did, or what Rhys did with Eris. Like she would have made the same deal in order to keep Feyre safe, but the stuff with her father, with Kier having access to Valaris, makes her like quite nervous. But like she has talked it out with Rhysand this morning. She still needs to talk it out with Asriel. And honestly, she's feeling like a little bit more surprised by his betrayal because he's like so in her pocket. Like he's so obsessed with her that like normally he wouldn't have done that. But like she's feeling better. Mor is still there when the healer arrives to look over Elaine. The healer like looks over her. She can find nothing wrong with her physically, but Magda can't enter her mind because she's Cauldron Maid. And so only like it's a like close to like situation, and because Magda isn't like made, she's unable to go in her mind. And she suggests that Feyre doesn't try either because Feyre would probably encounter similar difficulties. Magda doesn't think there's anything wrong with Elaine, but that she was like simply changed by the trauma of the cauldron, and like this is like the new reality for Elaine. And Magda suggests that if anyone were to help her, it might be Lucien, because he might be able to detect what's going on, what like might be wrong with her emotionally, mentally, because they are mates, and the bond kind of like serves as like a bridge between the souls, and so he might be able to use that to like sniff things out. Nesta's not thrilled with that response and demands that Feyre gets another healer. She's like kind of rude about the whole thing, but like Feyre's like, let's just see if Lucien can like sense anything. And so she sets Lucien up on a little like tea date with her sister just to see if it'll help. Nesta's obviously like pissed, but Nesta's always pissed. Feyre and Nesta have like very different experiences with men. As I don't know if we know this yet, but at some point we will learn that Nesta had some like an attempted assault on her when she was human still, and that has like really been her only experience with men up until this point. It's been negative. She has no good, nice experiences. Where like Feyre has not only Rhysand, who like obviously she's in love with, but she has like male friends as well. I think she has like a much more well-rounded experience of men. But I think Nesta is incredibly distrustful of men, especially Lucien, who clearly wants something from Elaine. And I think she's like very hesitant and very protective over Elaine in this way. But Feyre's like, no, we're gonna try this. If Lucien can't find anything amiss, We will get another healer. I'm not going to leave them alone. Like, Feyre is babysitting from the corner when this is happening, but like, we're going to try it. And Nesta is like, you're just going to drag her down here and force her to sit with Lucien. And Feyre is like, I'm going to invite her. I'm going to give her the option to come down here. And then Nesta says to Mor, and what will you be doing? And Mor says, I will be sitting with Feyre, keeping an eye on things. Like, Mor is also promising this. I think there's this like second level in which Nesta kind of knows to some extent of Mor's experience with men after kind of everything that went down like Eris yesterday. And I think she trusts Mor to kind of like keep an eye out on her sister as well. Mor and Feyre watch Elain and Lucien. It's very awkward. Nesta's in the other room trying to like sneak a peek around the wall, but Amren keeps yelling at her to pay attention to their lessons. They're building walls in their mind to practice for the wall. Feyre is like, I can't sense any power coming from my sister. I don't think Amren is doing anything. She does not trust Amren as a teacher. Rhys and Cassian are arriving back home after the meeting with Keir and his Darkbringer armies, and Feyre like spots him out the window, and she sends a mind message to Rhys telling her not to come inside to interrupt Lucien and Elain. So Cassian and him decide to go get a drink. Rhys says to her mentally, Illyrian warriors know when to pick their battles, and with Nesta watching everything like a hawk and you two circling like vultures, I know who will walk away from that fight. And then Feyre also tells him about like the responses they've gotten from the High Lord meetings. Then Elain rises and goes, what was that? And Lucien says, it was a tug on the bond. And Nesta's here. Nesta says, what did you do? What did you do to her? Amren is like, get back here, you wicked girl. And Lucien says, nothing. I'm so sorry, Elain. I didn't mean to do anything. I'm sorry if that unsettled you. And Elain says, it felt strange, like you pulled on a thread tied to a rib. And Lucien again apologizes. And Elain says to Nesta, twin ravens are coming, one white and one black. And Nesta's like, what can I get you, Elain? This like soft, sweet voice that she only uses with Elain. And Elain says sunshine, and so Nesta takes her sister out into the garden and probably gives Lucien dagger eyes the entire way there, I would imagine. Lucien explains that he had felt the thread between him and Elain, and he had just reached Elaine's end. Like, he had like slowly climbed down the thread, reached Elain when she like got up and left. And Amren's annoyed because she comes out of this room and is like, where did Nesta go? Her lessons are not over. And Feyre has to go get Nesta to like send her back, and Lucien is going to help them like pick a location for their meeting, because now that they are starting to get responses from the High Lords, they have to pick a neutral location for the meeting, which is very difficult because most locations within Prythian are within a specific court, and that would like obviously give that home court advantage. It's a few days later when we pick back up, and Feyre is at flying lessons with Asriel. Feyre has been doing so much research. She's really been putting all of her reading skills to the test. Obsessed with that. She's been researching both the wall and the Ouroboros mirror. Also, they've been having lots of meetings with the entire court about the High Lord meeting and where they're going to hold it. The mirror is fairly famous. Feyre can find like a lot of references to it, but she can find no account of anyone who has mastered it, except the Weaver. Asriel is still working with her on flying, and particularly her fear of like falling. Feyre keeps like crashing into trees, and it's becoming very obvious to Feyre. I think it was obvious to everyone else because they knew how hard it is to learn to fly. It's becoming obvious to Feyre that she's not going to be ready to fight in the legions when the war comes in 3 weeks, you know? Like, she is not going to be up to snuff for that. Asriel tells her a little bit about how difficult it was for him to learn to fly because he was so much older. He says to her, because I was so old, I had a fear of flying. I did not trust my instincts. It was an embarrassment to be taught so late, not just to me, but all in the war camp once I arrived. But I learned, often going off by myself. Cassian, of course, found me first, mocked me, beat me to hell, and then offered to train me. Rhys was there the next day. They taught me to fly. And then he tells the story. Okay, I'm going to read you a huge chunk of the story. This was a part of ACOTAR that I did not remember, and I think it's actually such a beautiful story. So I'm going to read you large chunks of it. So there's going to be a lot of me reading at the end of this video. It says, I'm going to tell you the story that Rhys had told me he brought home from the war when he went to visit Miriam and Draken in their new home. So Miriam had been leading 50,000 of her people across the desert to the Erythraean Sea, while Draken's aerial legion provided coverage. But when they got to the sea, the ships that were supposed to take them home were destroyed, and so they were trapped between the sea, and behind them there was an army approaching. Draken's people are seraphim with feathered wings. Oh my gosh, I think we know that. And they have air and wind magic, so they wound up cleaving the sea itself so the people could run through it. We're thinking Prince of Egypt part the Red Sea like Moses, you know? Miriam was the last to cross. She wanted to stay behind until the last of her people crossed the sea. She would not leave a single human in her army behind. They were about halfway through when the other army reached them. The seraphim were completely spent. Their magic could barely hold the sea passage, and Draken knew that if they held it any longer, the army would reach them. They did not see Miriam skewered by the queen herself. Draken thought she made it out, carried by one of his soldiers. He ordered the parted sea to come down to drown the enemy force. But a young seraphim cartographer named Nephili saw Miriam go down. Draken was frantic, but their magic was spent, and no force in the world could hold back the sea as it barreled down. No one could reach his mate in time, but Nephili did. She was a cartographer because she had been rejected by the legion's fighting ranks. Her wings were too small, the right one somewhat malformed, and she was slight, short enough that she'd be a dangerous gap in the front lines when they fought shield to shield. Draken had let her try out for the Legion as a courtesy to her lover, but Nephili failed. She could barely carry the seraphim shield, and her smaller wings hadn't been strong enough to keep up with the others. So she had made herself invaluable as a cartographer during the war, helping Draken and her lover find the geographical advantages in their battles. And she became Miriam's dearest friend during those long months as well. And on that day, on the seafloor, Nephili remembered that her friend had been in the back of the line. She returned for her, even as all others fled for the distant shores. She found Miriam skewered on the queen's spear, bleeding out, the seawall starting to come down on the opposite shore, killing the approaching army, first racing towards them. Miriam told Nephili to save herself, but Nephili would not abandon her friend. She picked her up and flew. When Rhys spoke to Draken about it years later, he still didn't have the words to describe what happened. It defied all logic, all training. Nephili, who had never been strong enough to hold a seraphim shield, carried Miriam. Triple the weight. And more than that, she flew. The sea was crashing down upon them, but Nephili flew like the best of the seraphim warriors. The seafloor was a labyrinth of jagged rocks, too narrow for the seraphim to fly through. They'd tried during their escape and crashed into them, but Nephili, with her smaller wings, had they been 1 inch wider, she would not have fit. And more than that, Nephili soared through them, Miriam dying in her arms, as fast and as skilled as the greatest of seraphim. Nephili, who had been passed over, who had been forgotten, she outraced death itself. There was not a foot of room between her and the water on either side of her when she shot up from the sea floor. Not half of that rising up at her feet, and yet her too small wingspan, that deformed wing, they did not fail her, not once, not for one wing beat. I did not remember the story at all, and I think it is so beautiful. It is very Throne of Glass coded in a multitude of ways. It's just so gorgeous. Obsessed with it. And then Azriel explains that Rhysand and the boys have adopted this philosophy with their own army, reminding each other that their greatest weakness can sometimes be their biggest strength, and the most unlikely of person can alter the course of history. And Azriel says to her, so we train Feyre until that last possible day, because we never know if that one extra hour will make the difference. Okay. Azriel giving a motivational speech. I would hire him. That night, Feyre is very, very, very sore when she gets home. She finds Rhysand doing more research. We're researching all the time. Rhys helps her get in the bath and then gives her a massage, which obviously leads to spicy times. And then as they're lying in bed together afterwards, Feyre says to her husband, I wish I had days to spend with you. Just like this. Just me and you. And Rhys promises her, we will. We will. Okay, that's where we're gonna end things for this video. Subscribe if you want to be in the know for when the next video comes out, and I will see you there. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.